Chapter 397. Rong Lu's body disappeared and the blood origin entered knowing destiny's body. Wan Feng Chen looked at the young man in front of him and for some reason, a deep chill flashed through his heart. He never knew that a person's rationality could be so terrifying. He would not be emotional or impulsive. He would not even be affected by human emotions. He was like a cold machine, accurately calculating every step. On the side, Jiang Hua felt the change in his good friend's heart. He could not help but sigh, but he did not say anything. He had learned more about knowing destiny from General Xian. Although he did not completely agree with knowing destiny's cold rationality, he could understand it. No one was born this way. However, in this chaotic world, there was no room for naivety. If knowing destiny did not give up everything, the great Xia might have already collapsed. Let's go. Ning Chen glanced at the man beside him and said. N. Jiang Hua nodded and stepped forward to follow. The two went far away. Wan Feng Chen looked at the two leaving and was silent for a long time. Perhaps, he should be glad that knowing destiny's schemes would not be used on his own people. Half a day later, Jiang Hua and Ning Chen came to the general family of Tianjin City. Today, under the subtle influence of Jiang Hua, most of the matters of the general family had been handed over to Jiang Xian. This little daughter of the general family who was bullied in the past had grown into an indispensable part of the general family. In the front hall of the general family, Jiang Xian, who was dealing with the family affairs, saw the two appear in the hall. Her eyes immediately turned red. The housekeeper in the hall put away the account book and left. Master. Jiang Xian ran up and hugged the red-clothed young man in the hall. She immediately showed her little head and greeted Jiang Hua softly, brother. Ha! Jiang Hua smiled helplessly. This sister of his was the closest to his master. You've grown up. Ning Chen rubbed the hair of the girl in his arms and said with a gentle face. The little girl who he had taken away from the general family had finally shed her inferiority complex and confusion. She had truly become a proud daughter of heaven. Ning Chen gently pushed away the girl in his arms and said softly, Jiang Xian, master has brought you the person you want to see the most. As soon as he finished speaking, the Book of Chaos moved slightly. Specks of starlight overflowed and converged into a familiar figure. She was dressed in blue clothes and had an elegant appearance. She was as beautiful as before. Fan Lingyue, the most stunning woman in the divine continent for thousands of years. Master. Jiang Xian was startled to see the person who had suddenly appeared in front of her. She immediately knelt down. She had seen a portrait of her master in the northern Meng Emperor's palace. It was almost identical. Jiang Hua, let's go out, said Ning Chen. Yes. Jiang Hua glanced at the woman in the hall, then looked away and said, I'll treat you to a drink. It's rare for you to be so generous. It would be impolite to refuse. Ning Chen turned around and walked out. Ha, it's not easy to earn some family property. However, I'll have enough wine today, laughed Jiang Hua. After the two of them left, Fan Lingyue turned her gaze back and looked at the young lady in front of her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with gentleness as she said, Get up. Thank you, master. Jiang Xian got up and stood there somewhat nervously. However, she couldn't help curiously sizing up her master whom she had never seen before. In the back hall, on the roof of the west wing, the blood moon scattered a waterfall of coldness. Jiang Hua casually tossed a jar of wine over and said, Is that the Fan Lingyue who forced you into desperate straits several times back then? Yes. Ning Chen opened the jar and drank a mouthful of wine. He felt a burning sensation in his throat and asked, Is she beautiful? Yes. Jiang Hua nodded. Beautiful women are the most terrifying. That's what Mother Zhang told me. Ning Chen smiled faintly. Who is Mother Zhang? Jiang Hua's face flashed with curiosity. Zhang Wuji's mother, replied Ning Chen. Who is Zhang Wuji? Jiang Hua was even more puzzled. A silly boy from the neighboring village when I was young. Ning Chen drank another mouthful of wine and casually spouted some nonsense. You're drunk. Jiang Hua heard something and stretched out the jar. Perhaps. Perhaps after I'm drunk, I'll know whether or not I'm dreaming. Ning Chen clinked the jar in his hand with Jiang Hua's and smiled. In the front hall, Jiang Xian saw her master. After a short moment of nervousness, she also recovered her young girl's nature and curiously asked about this and that. Fan Lingyue answered every one of her questions with unprecedented patience. No matter if it was ordinary trifling matters or questions about cultivation, she answered everything she knew without holding back. After asking about many things, Jiang Xian worshipped her master's talent more and more. She discovered that as long as she could ask a question, there was nothing that her master couldn't answer. After she finished asking questions about cultivation, Jiang Xian suddenly thought of something that had puzzled her for a long time. After hesitating for a moment, she finally couldn't help but ask very carefully, Master, are you and Master really just friends? In her heart, her master and master should be a pair made in heaven. Even if they used to be on different sides, they should still have good feelings for each other. Fan Lingyue smiled faintly. She could hear the meaning behind her disciple's words. A young girl at the age of yearning for love would always yearn for a beautiful ending no matter what. Jiang Xian, you're still young. There are some things that you might not understand. Feelings are a very luxurious thing for me and your master, or rather, it's a burden that we can't bear. However, you're different from us. You still have a long life ahead of you. You have to believe that there will always be someone in this world who is worth entrusting your life to, Fan Lingyue said softly. Hearing her master's words, Jiang Xian nodded as if she understood. The confusion in her eyes was hard to hide. In the front hall and back hall of the general's house, the four people talked until the wine jars were set high, the cold moon hung high, the cold wind gradually rose, and the withered leaves fluttered, covering the sorrow of the world. Ning Chen and Jiang Hua drank while talking nonsense. Perhaps the two of them didn't even remember what they were talking about. It had nothing to do with the suffering of the world or the underworld king. They only talked about which courtesan was the most beautiful in Fallen Moon City and which wine was the best to drink in Heavenly Stellar City. Men talked about women and wine, and it should also be about women and wine. If there's a chance, I'll definitely go to Fallen Moon City and see if the courtesan you're talking about is really that beautiful. Jiang Hua's face was full of disbelief. You can doubt my character, but you can't doubt my taste, Ning Chen said as he drank the wine in his hand. There's no need to doubt your character because you don't have any. As for your taste, I'll evaluate it after I see it, Jiang Hua smiled. The wine is good. If I can survive this time, I'll send some to old man Lu. I haven't been there in a long time. Ning Chen lay down and closed his eyes, talking to himself. In the cold wind, Ji Ming fell asleep and didn't say anything else. He didn't know how long he hadn't closed his eyes, but at this moment, he didn't open them again. Jiang Hua smiled faintly and drank mouthful after mouthful of wine. He also didn't say anything else. In the Divine Continent, in the Eternal Night sect, the Underworld King had been recuperating for several days. Other than the irreversible damage to his qi, all the wounds on his divine body had recovered. Bai Jiang, the Underworld King said calmly. Your subordinate is here. Bai Jiang knelt down and said. Come with me to open the passage between the two territories. Didn't you always want to kill Luoli with your own hands? I'll give you this opportunity, the Underworld King said calmly. Thank you, Your Majesty, for fulfilling my wish. Bai Jiang's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he said respectfully. At the same time, Niu Chang and the others who couldn't find the experts of the Divine Continent rushed directly from the Qizhou mountain range to the Eternal Night sect. According to the aftermath of the battle, even Niu Chang had to admit that the experts of the Divine Continent didn't have a high chance of surviving this time. However, it wasn't that they didn't gain anything. At least the experts of the divine continent left behind the underworld king's weakness, so they wouldn't be completely unprepared like last time. In front of the Eternal Night sect, figures landed one after another, wanting to challenge the underworld king's power again. A black aura surged, and the underworld king appeared. He glanced at the group of people blocking his way, and his calm eyes flashed with indifference. Humans always didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It seemed that sparing their lives last time was unnecessary. Be careful, the underworld king's injury seems to have healed. The three disasters of West Buddha Mountain warned with a serious expression. They wanted to take advantage of the underworld king's injury to launch a surprise attack, but they didn't expect the underworld king to recover so quickly. Nu Chang waved her hand and said coldly, "Follow the plan and set up the formation." The sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros was unsheathed, and dazzling golden light rose endlessly. The divine weapon of Tianfu Mountain, the weapon that could cleanse sins, reappeared in the world. Yu Tianhong pulled out the heaven sword at the same time, and his genuine vitality reached its peak. He took a step forward and started the battle. The other 5 of the 3 disasters watched attentively, and they condensed their genuine vitality, ready to attack at any time. The heaven sword was about to reach him, but the underworld king raised his hand and blocked the divine weapon. He gathered the genuine vitality in his palm, and his power surged out. It seemed like a casual move, but it was so powerful that it was shocking. Yu Tianhong had been prepared. The moment the deity attacked, he withdrew his sword and retreated quickly, avoiding the descending divine power in advance. The next moment, the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros swept past quickly, and the divine weapon that could kill sins shone brightly. "You've improved, but unfortunately, you're still too weak." The underworld king waved his hand to shake off the divine weapon of Tianfu Mountain. He turned his palm over, and the divine light illuminated the world, suppressing the Buddha's light, and destroying the world. Nu Chang retreated quickly to avoid the divine light. She couldn't avoid the divine move from 1,000 feet away. She activated the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros holy chi and blocked the destructive divine power. The overflowing blood dyed the divine weapon red. At the same time, the other 5 of the 3 disasters moved. They blocked the 5 vital acupoints of the underworld king, but the protective genuine vitality surged out, and the divine weapon couldn't go any further. In the moment of the stalemate, the heaven sword arrived, and its sharp edge pierced the deity's heart. The underworld king raised his hand, and the divine move gathered. Nu Chang turned back, and the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros gathered the genuine vitality of the deity again. The 3 waves of attacks took turns, and under the great consumption, the genuine vitality of the deity was finally shaken. His attack was weakened, but he still knocked Yu Tianhong and the other 5 people away. After the divine move was made, the genuine vitality's vibration intensified. The sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros pierced an inch, but just as it was about to touch the body of the deity, the sword stopped and couldn't move forward. The underworld king's hand grabbed the divine weapon, and blood dripped down from the sword. The Buddhist holy chi and the divine power kept colliding, and the karmic sword was extraordinary. The wound on the deity's hand couldn't be healed immediately.
Chapter 398. In front of the Eternal Night cult, the experts of West Earth teamed up to fight the Nether King. Wave after wave of attacks were launched without any gaps. The number 1 swordsman of the Divine Palace turned into a stream of light. His heavenly sword slashed out streaks of sharp light as he tried his best to seal off the opportunity for the deity to attack. Nu Chang transformed Buddha Mountain into a weapon to cleanse sin. Dazzling golden light followed like a shadow as it continuously attacked the deity's vital points. "Is this all you have?" The Nether King raised his hand, and his true essence surged. The 7 divine weapons suddenly became sluggish. Shortly after, the divine aura spread out, and everyone was sent flying. Ah! They vomited mouthfuls of vermilion red. It was the powerlessness of humans to defy the heavens. Even someone as strong as Nu Chang, a peak expert who was half a step into the Great Perfection realm, and 6 of the top experts of West Earth, who knew the deity's weakness, still couldn't shake the divine aura. The Nether King lost his patience. He flipped his palms, and raging waves surged out from the surroundings. The divine aura shook the 9 heavens. Seeing that the divine aura was about to descend, Nu Chang raised her cultivation to the limit. The spiritual light of cleansing sin sublimated to the extreme. The holy light pierced through heaven and earth, resisting the divine aura, illuminating the world. Ha! Yu Tianhong and the others concentrated their true essence at the same time, gathering everyone's strength to increase the power of the divine weapons. The 2 extremes collided, and a huge explosion occurred. The sky collapsed and the earth collapsed. The ground cracked, and sand billowed, spreading out for thousands of feet. With a crack, the divine weapons broke and flew to the side. This was the most despairing ending. Humans couldn't defy the heavens. Before the deity, they could only accept the judgment. Figures fell to the ground one after another. Blood spurted out from their bodies, dyeing the dust and sand red. They were forever buried in the East Domain. Only the 2 of you are left. The Nether King raised his hand and flipped his palm. Heavenly fire surged. The next move would completely end the lives of the blasphemers. Immeasurable life, immeasurable death, reincarnation after reincarnation. Seeing that her life was at stake, Nu Chang used the spiritual heart in her body to activate the life-saving move that she could only use after reaching the Great Perfection realm. Suddenly, an ancient and majestic dragon gate appeared, blocking the divine flames. The 2 extremes collided, and the space rumbled. The dragon gate responded and dissipated. Nu Chang and Yu Tianhong had already disappeared in the sky. The Nether King coldly snorted. His figure flickered, and an afterimage flashed as he quickly followed. When Bai Jiang saw this, he stomped his foot and also followed.
The hearts of the 2 people who were seriously injured as they fled to the east became heavier and heavier. The power of the gods was not something that could be resisted by the power of human beings. Could it be that the destruction of the human world 30,000 years ago was going to happen again? It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or some other reason, but the 2 of them escaped to the Ascension Valley. If they went further east, they would reach the easternmost land, the end of the world. At the same time, cultivators from the Divine Prefecture walked out of seclusion in the holy lands of the 4 ultimate realms, indicating that the final battle was about to begin. Luo Li and Li Luo fused together, gathering all of their power, reaching the peak of their lives. Their might continuously rose, reaching the peak of the 3rd calamity. The hierarch of the Eternal Night, the number 1 cultivator in the Divine Prefecture, and the former number 1 figure of the Eternal Night cult. Although he had a mortal body, he was astonishingly powerful. If it were not for the lack of time, perhaps the Divine Prefecture would really have a supreme cultivator in the Great Fulfillment Realm. Are you ready? The red light gathered and knowing destiny appeared. He looked at the figures in front of him and said calmly. We can set off at any time, said the Eternal Night Hierarch. Xia Zi also walked out, surrounded by demonic qi. The demonic mark between his eyebrows became redder and redder. What little humanity he had left was about to disappear. Too many people had been sacrificed in this divine tribulation. Now, no matter the price, they had to send Pluto back. Everyone moved and headed to the top of the 9th heaven. The final battle had finally arrived. In front of the Ascension Valley, a god appeared. Yu Tianhong and Nu Chang had nowhere to go. The god's might shook, and the 2 of them flew back more than 100 feet. Blood kept dripping from the corners of their mouths. The 2 of them were severely injured and covered in blood. Before the god, the 3 calamities and the Great Fulfillment Realm were just illusions. Pluto glanced coldly at the 2 people who had been sent flying. He ignored them and walked to the passage between the 2 realms. He flipped his right hand, and the divine flame roared out, crashing into the seal set by knowing destiny. With a loud bang, the heaven and earth of the two realms shook. The seal flickered continuously, showing signs of instability. At this moment, a five-colored flowing light swept out from the space passage. It was extremely sharp and carried a majestic fate energy. It slashed toward the god in front of it. Pluto raised his hand and blocked the divine weapon. The god's might spread, and the Nianqing flew out and stabbed into the ground. The last remaining fate energy dissipated. At this moment, many figures walked out of the space passage. The cultivators of the divine prefecture who had disappeared for a long time appeared again. There was no turning back. This battle would be the last chance for the cultivators of the divine prefecture to stop the god from destroying the world. If they failed, the human world would be doomed forever. Are you finally willing to show yourself? Knowing destiny, Marquis. Pluto looked at the red-robed young man behind the crowd and said lightly. Sorry to keep you waiting, Ningchen replied calmly. This is your last chance. Don't disappoint the god again. Pluto raised the hand of God again. In an instant, the heaven and earth collapsed. The Ascension Valley disappeared for no reason, and the land within 100 miles collapsed violently. Heavenly fire rose all over the sky with destructive power. The ultimate gods might once again made people feel the despair of the end of the world. Just as the gods' might was about to appear, knowing destiny did not wait any longer. He leaped into the sky and stood at the end of the sky. Blue starlight overflowed from his body and condensed into the most beautiful figure. Knowing destiny and military counselor worked together for the first time after 6 years. The scroll of light and the scroll of chaos slowly merged. Suddenly, the rules of heaven and earth collapsed. A strange destructive aura descended from the sky and enveloped the entire land of the divine prefecture. I'll take my leave first, Fan Lingyue looked at the young man beside her. A smile flashed across her beautiful face. Take care, Ning Chen nodded and said softly. Fan Lingyue took one last look at the divine prefecture below her. Her figure immediately dissipated and merged into the two scrolls. In the next moment, the divine prefecture suffered a great calamity. Tens of thousands of people cried in grief. Figures collapsed one after another, and blood splattered. Regardless of gender, age, millions of bloody light soared into the sky. Endless sorrow and resentment instantly covered the moon in the sky. The shocking scene shocked everyone. Only the pair of emotionless eyes in the sky looked at the desolate scene of the divine prefecture without any change. Emotionless, heartless, and fickle. At this moment, no one could understand the figure in red in the sky. Could it be that knowing destiny's heart was really made of iron and stone? Oh! Shen Ming's eyes flashed with a strange light. Under the suppression of the resentment, the rising divine flame immediately weakened. The moment he attacked, his true essence shook violently. The hierarch of eternal night, Xia Zi, Marquis Kaixuan, and the others came to their senses. They joined forces to block the attack and retreated 3 steps. The true qi in their bodies surged violently. Nianqing flew up. Knowing destiny held his blade and disappeared instantly. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yama. The extremely fast blade slashed across the sharp edge of death. Somehow, the blade had turned blood red. The resentment weapon strengthened by resentment was so cold that it made people tremble. Seeing this, Wan Fengchen and Jiang Hua also waved their blades and rushed forward. They defended knowing destiny with all their strength. Yama shifted his body and dodged the sharp edges. He turned his palm over and a vigorous palm power surged out. Marquis Kaixuan, Xian Tian, and Xia Zi blocked the attack. With a bang, they retreated several steps and the corners of their mouths turned red. Outside the battle, the falling star drew the star mark. The green arrow light gathered and shot out in an instant. The true essence around Shen Ming's body appeared and blocked the arrow light. Before he could counterattack, the blood-red resentment weapon closed in on him and blocked his chance to attack. The bright and chaotic scrolls merged into one. Fan Lingyue's last consciousness scattered between heaven and earth, adding the resentment of millions of creatures to the body of Yama. Shen Ming's body was restrained and couldn't use his full strength. He showed signs of defeat for the first time. Dawn appeared. The hierarch of eternal night circulated the true essence around him. Red lightning rumbled and the smoke cloud divine spear shone with red light as it slashed toward Shen Ming. Luali, your opponent is me. Bai Zhang's figure flashed and blocked the divine spear with his sword. Wu Guan, whose cultivation had doubled, coldly looked at the first person in the Eternal Night hierarch in 1,000 years. The hierarch of Eternal Night's expression also turned cold. Without any nonsense, his body moved and the divine spear fell with great force. The swords and spears clashed again. The sharp edges kept flashing around the two. Their grudges were hard to resolve. Only death was the end of their hatred. The two sides had different opponents, but they were equally tragic. Drops of blood spilled and dyed the ground red. In front of Yama, there were 3 blades. One was attacking and the other 2 were defending. Each blade was faster than the last. Marquis triumphant return, Xian Tian, and Xia Zi used all their strength to block the attacks. The falling star formation was clear on offense and defense. In the distance, Luofei, who was the only one who knew Ning Chen's plan, stood outside the battle. She watched with rapt attention but didn't participate in the battle. Not bad, huh? Yama grabbed the blade of resentment weapon and waved his hand to send Jiang Hua and Wan Fengchen flying. The divine flame around him rose again and slammed toward the knowing destiny body. Vast military might. Marquis triumphant return's figure flashed and blocked the attack with his blade. A brilliant slash fell and blocked the divine power. Void extinction Xian Tian. Xian Tian coordinated with him and endless sword flow crashed into the destructive divine flame. Demonic sword, reincarnation. The Emperor activated his demonic vitality and blocked the divine power with a reincarnation sword. With a bang, the 3 figures retreated more than 10 steps. Blood kept dripping from their arms. Ah! After the divine power was used, the blade of resentment weapon broke through the protective true vitality and pierced into Yama's chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this, Xia Zi rushed to the front of the god and stabbed the vital part of Yama's heart with the demonic sword. Do you think it's that easy? Yama's face turned cold. He endured the pain in his chest and pushed the demonic sword away with his palm. In the next moment, there was a loud bang in the sky. Lightning fell from the sky and gathered on the god's palm. The divine power spread out and forced the people who wanted to help to retreat. Knowing destiny Marquis, your existence makes the process of the gods destroying the human world more interesting. However, it's time to end it. Yama raised his hand and pressed it on Ning Chen's chest. An endless gravitational force spread out. Suddenly, the knowing destiny body collapsed. Yama, the human world won't be destroyed. You can't win. The phoenix origin left his body and Ning Chen's figure kept flickering. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared and returned to the god's body. With the origin back, Yama opened his eyes and a terrifying divine power spread out. The 12 wings of sin spread out on his back and disappeared in an instant. Yama, the lord of the 7 ultimate celestial realm, and the god of creation of the 5 regions. At this moment, the last flaw disappeared. The vibrating true vitality around him gradually stabilized. Chapter 399. The Underworld King used all of his power, and his divine might shook the world. Black energy continuously spread out, exuding a destructive pressure that frightened even gods and ghosts. The aftershock of the attack caused everyone present to be pushed back by more than 10 steps. Blood continuously flowed from their mouths. The most extreme result was that the 7 ultimate divine body was complete. His true yuan was endless, vast, and heavy. It's over. The Nether King raised his hand and thunder roared. Dazzling lightning bolts shot out and blasted the people in front of him away. Blood splashed out, dyeing the sky red. There was no longer any hope. The destruction of the world had already become a foregone conclusion. Xian Tian, who bore the brunt of the attack, forcefully withstanding the majority of the divine might. His sword broke and he fell to the ground. Xian Tian. Grief flashed through Wan Fengqian's eyes. He waved his hand and the resentment soldier flew into his hand. He took a step forward and turned into a streak of light, slashing toward the god. You can't. Jiang Hua was startled and rushed forward to save him. Are you angry? Are you filled with regret? Unfortunately, you've already missed the last chance the god gave you. The Nether King flipped his palm and divine flames surged like an ocean. Jiang Hua was immediately sent flying. Blood spurted out as he crashed into the ground. The shockwaves sent Wan Fengqian flying back dozens of feet as blood flowed out of his body. Jiang Xian, before he could finish his words, the light in Jiang Hua's eyes dimmed. A genius of a generation, the hope of the general family for 100 years, had died. Jiang Hua. Wan Fengqian's heart was filled with pain. He staggered back, but he couldn't defy the heavens. He couldn't resist his fate. Only anger and regret could devour his heart. On the other side, the Eternal Night Hierarch saw the sudden change in the battle. He quickly rushed forward to help. At the same time, Bai Jiang moved. Blue blood sky tears streaked across the sky, blocking the path ahead. You won't be able to go anywhere today. Wu Guan swung his sword to block the attack. The divine weapon glowed with a green light as it drew out streaks of cold light, adding a touch of sorrow to the tragic battle. The sword stabbed into his body, causing blood to gush out. The Eternal Night Hierarch grabbed the sword with his left hand and slashed down with the smoke cloud divine dagger axe. Luoli, don't think that you're the only one who isn't afraid of death. Whether it's courage or anything else, I've never been inferior to you. Bai Jiang snorted and blocked the dagger axe with a flip of his palm. He didn't give in at all. He wanted to defeat his opponent. Bang! However, at this moment, a green and red figure separated from the Eternal Night Hierarch's body and pressed a palm on Wu Guan's chest, bringing forth a great waterfall of blood. Bai Jiang didn't have time to react. He was sent flying backwards several paces. His body flashed, and his spear slashed through the air. A head flew up into the air, shocking the world for the last time. All that remained was regret and unwillingness. Wu Guan had lost his life, and the enmity between them had dissipated. The Eternal Night Hierarch didn't linger in the slightest and rushed to the rescue with his spear. This was their last chance, and they couldn't afford to lose again no matter what. Scarlet lightning surged, and the divine halberd slashed down. The deity flipped his palm to block it. The boundless scarlet lightning was unable to move even half a step forward. Wild sand spreads 10,000 li. Marquis victorious return stepped forward and brandished his saber, causing the sand to churn violently. With a slash of his saber, the earth split open. You did your best. The Nether King remained motionless like a mountain. He raised his hand and grabbed the brilliant world blade. With a loud clang, the blade was broken. His powerful palm imprinted on Triumph Return's chest. A pool of blood splattered as he retreated several steps. In front of the divine might, it was difficult to return victorious. The great Xia war god looked at the ground in front of him with reluctance. This life was over. There were regrets, but no regrets. Triumph return. The Eternal Night Hierarch revealed a sorrowful expression. The situation in front of him was so difficult that he couldn't see the slightest bit of hope. Sword style, heaven overturning sword. At that moment, a sharp sword light rushed over from afar. Soon after, two different sword lights appeared and intertwined, transforming into a dazzling sword that slashed towards the deity. Jian Yi, Jian Er, and Mu Qiansheng appeared on the battlefield. The three swords joined hands to resist the divine might. The Nether King waved his hand, scattering the sword lights. He turned around and released his true yuan. Boundless divine might surged out, attacking everyone present. With a loud bang, everyone retreated. At the moment of crisis, 5 more silhouettes appeared and stood around the deity. Qing He, Zhongyong, Jiyu, Taiping, and the few remaining martial marquises of Grand Xia had all arrived. Even the Beiwu Marquis who had betrayed Grand Xia had come. At this moment, they had cast aside their enmity and joined hands once again. Pillars of light soared into the sky. The 5 martial marquises' strength soared to the extreme. The heavens and earth sensed it and sent down a demonic tribulation. The 5 pillars of light pierced through the heavens and earth. The martial marquises' karma brought about an unprecedented great tribulation. The resentment that filled the sky seemed to have found an outlet and crazily gathered. The heavenly demon tribulation instantly transformed into a terrifying destructive force that drowned the 5 martial marquises. Within the 5 pillars of light, the Nether King felt his body sink and his aura become suppressed. World Wave. East Flow. Under the demonic tribulation, Qing He took the lead and the 5 martial marquises moved together. They forcefully endured the pain of the heavenly tribulation and instantly arrived in front of the deity. Using themselves as the weapon and the demonic tribulation as the power, the raging waves surged out. This was the scene of humanity's will reaching the pinnacle. Even the deity was moved. The surrounding divine flames roared and his palm shook the raging waves. He used his full strength without holding back. This was the deity's respect for the opponent in front of him. The powerful resentment added to his body. The Nether King took half a step back. The true chi in his body trembled violently and forcefully blocked the might of the demonic tribulation. The heavenly demon tribulation dissipated and the divine flames engulfed the martial marquises. A drop of blood quietly fell from the corner of the deity's mouth. He was actually injured by the demonic tribulation. "You guys, name," the Nether King said seriously. "Grand Xia Martial Marquis." Qing He opened his mouth and in the next moment, his body scattered. Beiwu chuckled and then also disappeared. In the end, he was still unable to get rid of this title that he had carried for half his life. "I'll leave it to you guys." After the final words of farewell, Jiyu, Zhongyong, and Taiping scattered and disappeared from the world. The Grand Xia martial marquises were finished. Thousands of miles away, Marquis Anling and Kong Yu looked at the disappearing pillars of light and became silent. A newly conferred martial marquis and a future martial marquis. At this moment, they finally understood why Marquis Ji Ming was unwilling to express his opinion on the matter of the 2 being conferred marquises. In front of Ascension Valley, the divine tribulation shook the world. Heaven and earth wept in grief. The unceasing falling figures were the stubbornness of humanity. Facing the deities, they would rather die in battle than lower their heads. The 3 swords once again trembled. The star mark bow was drawn and the arrow pierced through the sky. Bearing the will of the martial marquis, the battle began again. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Xia Zi clashed with their swords. Demonic power and red lightning surged as they joined forces to shake the deities. Blood was spilled and injuries were swallowed. At this moment, there was no way back. There was no other thought. There was only battle until death. In the distance, Yu Tianhong and Nu Chang, who were shaken out of the battle by the aftermath of the battle, looked at the fierce battle between the divine prefecture's powerhouses and the deities. They were shocked beyond words. Outside the battle, no matter how fierce the battle was, Luofei did not make a move. She stood there motionless. In the sky, the brilliance of the bright and chaotic scrolls that had merged into one became dimmer and dimmer. Fine cracks appeared and spread horizontally and vertically. The 2 scrolls that caused chaos in the human world had suffered too much backlash and were on the verge of collapse. The bloody light of the resentment of millions of creatures gradually weakened. The Nether King's body became stronger and stronger. As the palm roared, the heavens and earth trembled. Divine power descended. Jian could not dodge in time. Seeing that he could not escape death, he used a broken sword to block the attack. With a bang, he was sent flying. Senior brother. Jian pupils shrank. His body was also sent flying by the aftershock. Live, on. The broken sword shattered and the swordsman fell. The desolate city's sword one disappeared. In the most tragic battle, the sunken ground was dyed red with blood. The will of the humans made the deities look askance. Since the creation of the world, this was the first time the deities put down their pride and treated the people in front of them as real opponents. Divine flames rose in the sky, and their power rose rapidly. Although they were suppressed by the resentment, they were still shockingly powerful. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Xia Zi joined forces to block the deities' attack again. However, after a loud bang, the smoke cloud divine spear and demonic sword could not withstand the deities' power. They cried out continuously and cracks appeared. In this hopeless battle, sword light and halberd light intertwined. This was the humans' last struggle to delay the deities' destruction. Time's up. It's time to end this. At this point, the battle was about to come to an end. Pulling back the other 4 regions was imminent. Pluto didn't want to delay any longer. He waved his hand and forced the people in front of him to retreat. Then, he raised both his palms. With a rumble, thunder fell from the sky and gathered on the deity's left palm. Then, divine flames surged out and turned into a huge vortex. It roared and swirled on the deity's right hand. Both moves were used at the same time. The earth moved and the mountains collapsed. In the distance, Wan Fengchen saw this. He used the 2 blades in his hands to support his injured body. He took a step forward and entered the battle again. The resentment weapon and the blood blade slashed out, and a dazzling blood-red light pierced towards the deity's heart. With a clanging sound, the deity's protective True Yuan blocked the blades. However, at this moment, the divine spear pointed to the sky and forcibly absorbed the remaining power of the deity's attack. In an instant, red lightning surged, and its power increased several times. Extreme lightning, sacrifice to the heavens. The deity's most powerful attack appeared in the world again. The Hierarch of Eternal Night slashed down with his spear. Red lightning with endless destructive power roared out and crashed into the deity's protective True Qi. When the 2 attacks collided, the divine spear shattered. At the same time, the red lightning broke through the deity's protective True Yuan and penetrated the deity's body. The Pluto groaned. Blood flowed out of his mouth. It was the first time he had been seriously injured since the battle. With a cracking sound, the lightning illuminated the dusky horizon. The deity endured the severe pain in his chest and used both of his techniques at the same time. The extremely powerful divine technique pressed down with a loud bang. In an instant, the space around him collapsed and disappeared. The land within 100 miles was devastated. The attack that could destroy the world was not something that humans could resist. Seeing that their last hope was about to be destroyed, the deity's endless resentment in the world fell from the sky and blocked the deity's destructive power. In the most extreme of collisions, light and light shattered, annihilated into nothingness. The divine might also subsequently dissipated, scattering between heaven and earth. The resentment was exhausted, and the last shackle on the Pluto's body disappeared. Just as the deities were about to attack again to end the battle, a piercing phoenix cry resounded through the 9 heavens. In the deity's body, the last of the great righteousness left by the headmaster burst out. The 2 forces collided. The True Yuan around the Pluto shook violently and showed signs of instability. At this moment, outside the battle, Luo Fei, who had not made a move until now, finally moved. The open heavenly book, and the bright moonlight illuminated the world. Chapter 400. Luo Fei attacked and the moonlight shone on the mortal world. In an instant, the void froze, flowers stopped blooming, birds stopped chirping, and heaven and earth seemed dead. Phoenix cries shook the sky as knowing destiny's consciousness resisted fiercely, drawing out the righteous energy from the headmaster. As the two forces clashed, Pluto's true chi stagnated and a flaw appeared in his protective true essence. Knowing destiny Marquis, do you want to fight me to the death again? Pluto snorted, his aura fluctuated as his divine power suppressed the resistance of his consciousness. In the battle, the moonlight shone and the backlash was self-inflicted. Blood dripped from the corner of Luo Fei's mouth as her divine power was unstoppable. Every breath was a struggle for life. Z, you have the power of no scroll left by knowing destiny Marquis in your body, hurry up and attack. Luo Fei urged. Xia Zi's eyes trembled as he looked at Pluto whose consciousness was constantly changing. The demonic sword in his hand was unprecedentedly heavy. One was for the people of the divine prefecture, and the other was for the life of his friend. Sacrificing one person in exchange for peace in the divine prefecture was a cruel choice. One sword to send knowing destiny to peace in the world. Xia Zi, don't let down knowing destiny Marquis' sacrifice. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Luan Fengchen dashed out, and the two sabers slammed into the god's protective true energy. Falling stars assisted at the same time as the star mark bow was drawn. A red arrow pierced through the air and shot towards the heart of the god. Half a day's remnant crimson moon. Mu Qiansheng and Jian Er waved their swords and rushed forward. The four divine weapons resisted the divine power and tried to break through the god's protective true essence to open a path for the emperor. A mere human dares to defile the face of a god, foolish. The underworld king opened his eyes, and the wings of sin appeared indistinctly. With a flip of his palm, incomparable divine might roared out. Pluto, you can't win. A resolute look flashed across the Eternal Night Hierarch's eyes. He raised the true origin around him to the limit and blocked the divine move head-on. With a bang, the divine might entered his body and destroyed his bones. Blood spurted out and scattered all over the sky. At the same time, the red arrow arrived and helped the sword. The god's protective true essence finally reached its limit and dissipated. Demonic sword. Xia Zi suppressed the pain in his heart and concentrated his demonic chi into the demonic sword. With the power of the heavenly book, the sword reached the god's heart. Buried heaven. A sword pierced through his body. Blood gushed out and flowed down along the edge of the demonic sword. He had killed a deity and left the knowing destiny state. The Nether King snorted and sent the person in front of him flying with a flip of his palm. He took half a step back and the aura around him flickered continuously. His divine body was destroyed. Black smoke surged out and his feathers fell. The consciousness of a deity that had descended to the mortal world could no longer stay. He could return to the seven extinction celestial realm at any time. Red stars converged, and the remnant soul left the body of the deity. Knowing destiny manifested to bid farewell to Yama. Jiming Marquis, you've won this time. However, there are always winners and losers in battles. I hope that when I return, the world will still be so lucky. As soon as he finished speaking, the god of hell's body dissipated, and rays of light flew in all directions. This was the power of the origin that had been seized by the gods when they created the divine body. The phoenix origin and the ghost origin flew out in different directions. Knowing destiny moved and grabbed the ghost origin without hesitation. Finally, success. The Eternal Night Hierarch was half kneeling on the ground, propping himself up with his blade. He was also nearing the end of his life. Father. Luo Fei rushed forward and injected her true chi, trying to save the former's life. No need. Knowing that he couldn't save himself, the Eternal Night Hierarch waved his hand to stop Luo Fei's useless efforts. He forced himself to stand up and looked at Jiming Marquis in front of him. Boy, if you have any unfulfilled wishes, hurry up. Hierarch, may we meet again? Ning Chen calmly said. Never. The Eternal Night Hierarch replied. At the last moment of his life, Ning Chen finally unloaded the heavy burden on his body. His figure flew out and rushed towards the direction of the Marquis mansion. Ximing Marquis mansion. Knowing destiny appeared, the state of his remnant soul became more and more unstable. He couldn't hold on for much longer. Marquis. Brother. Ruo Shi and Ning Shi, who had been waiting in the mansion, unconsciously covered their mouths. Tears dripped down. I'm sorry, but in the end, I still broke my promise. Ning Chen glanced at the two with a gentle look in his eyes. He had promised to live, but he couldn't do it. Ning Shi, open the secret room. I don't have much time left. I need to save Ghost Girl as soon as possible. Ning Chen whispered. Ning Shi nodded with tears in her eyes and stepped into the study. She came to the bookshelf behind the desk and waved her hand to open the door of the secret room. In the center of the secret room, there was an ice coffin lying horizontally. Inside the coffin, a beautiful red figure was sleeping peacefully without the slightest pain. Ning Chen stepped forward and took out the ghost origin. He slowly pushed it into the coffin. The next moment, ghost chi filled the air and the ghost origin disappeared into the woman's dantian. The waiting process was particularly long. 1 minute, 2 minutes, the figure in the coffin never woke up. Ning Chen's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. Can't I wait any longer? The time was up. Ning Chen sighed deeply and turned to look at the two behind him. He said goodbye, Ning Shi, Ruo Shi, goodbye. As soon as his voice fell, the remnant soul dissipated and scattered between heaven and earth. Knowing destiny's remnant soul disappeared. At the same time, in the Marquis mansion, knowing destiny's main body's aura quickly dissipated. In the homeland of West Buddha, a man's heart was connected to her veins. Her heart was connected to a man's heart, and the crystal flowers supporting her heart withered. Her life force also quickly dissipated. The sword rack fell, and the sad sound of the ancient swords accompanied her for many years. The sword heart had feelings. Yan Qin Wang's body trembled and he powerlessly closed his eyes. So what if he wasn't defeated? So what if he was a legend? At this moment, there was nothing he could do. In Ascension Valley, Wan Fengchen hugged Xian Tian and Jiang Hua's corpses. Without a word, he stepped into the spatial channel and bid farewell to the divine prefecture, returning to the four extreme realms. Luo Fei, I'm sorry. The sovereign apologized. His demonic qi surged and his last consciousness was gradually annihilated. The sovereign and the devil's figures flashed and disappeared to the east. Luo Fei didn't chase after them. She silently hugged her father's corpse and walked towards the west. Mu Qianshang, Jian Er, and Luo Xingchen also took the souls of the dead and left. On this day, the strong cultivators of the divine prefecture all disappeared. After a tragic battle, the injured went into seclusion, and the dead were buried. In the divine prefecture, the blood moon set in the west. The sun rose for the first time in 2 months. The warm morning light shone on the world, dispelling the darkness and the coldness. It's dawn. It's finally dawn. Countless people cried tears of joy. After experiencing despair and the divine tribulation, they finally understood the preciousness of peace. This must be the result of the Marquis risking their lives. The people of Great Xia looked at the blazing sun in the east, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. In the sky above the imperial city of Great Xia, New Chang appeared. Looking at the people kneeling on the ground, a faint light flashed in her eyes. In the next moment, New Chang disappeared and came to the Marquis residence. She waved her hand and took Ji Ming's body and left again. Oh. They succeeded. In the homeland of West Buddha, the masters of the Divine Palace and Demon Temple felt the disappearance of the Nether King's aura. They stepped out of the palace and stood in the void. In that case, it's our turn. Zi Tiangong looked at the demon Buddha in the distance and said, "That's my intention." The demon Buddha nodded and replied. The two masters joined forces and attacked at the same time. With a boom, the space passage between the two regions opened again. The people of the Divine Prefecture who had just survived the Divine Tribulation were shocked again. Looking at the huge ravine in the sky, they were shocked. One figure after another walked out. Although their powerful auras were far inferior to the Nether Kings, for the Divine Prefecture who had just experienced the Divine Tribulation, it was already an irresistible force. Build the Four Corners Divine Towers as soon as possible. Don't make any mistakes, the man in the lead said. Yes. The other three nodded and agreed. The four figures rushed out in four directions. No one could stop them. 2 days later, the Four Corners Divine Towers were built one after another. They towered into the clouds with an imposing aura. The Northern Meng Imperial Court, the Barbarian Dynasty, Yang Hong, and the Barbarian King tried to stop them, but they failed and returned with heavy injuries. Finally, the day has come. In the Divine Palace and Demon Temple, the two masters of the Consummation Plane felt the origin power of heaven and earth from the Divine Prefecture of the Eastern region. Their eyes flashed with a dazzling light. The origin power of each region was limited. The more they obtained, the greater the possibility of entering the next realm. The unknown realm, the unknown power, no one had set foot in it before. The power of the two continued to rise. The dragon gate behind them appeared and gradually became solid. In the Divine Prefecture, the damage caused by the Four Corners Divine Towers was getting worse. Disasters occurred everywhere. However, for the sake of the Nether King's destruction of the human world, the masters of the Divine Prefecture had all died. They could no longer stop this foreign disaster. Demonic Buddha, Violet Heavenly Palace, your ambition has impressed me. In the old site of the academy, Nu Chang looked at the Four Corners Divine Towers. Her eyes were cold. It seemed that she was not the only one who wanted to see the next realm. In a temporary wooden house, the soul-suppressing orb stabilized the remaining two souls of knowing destiny. 3 fate reversal pills forcibly kept the latter's last breath so that his vitality would not dissipate. Nu Chang wanted the tomes of arcane, especially the Scroll of Life. However, after several days of soul-searching, she found nothing. Knowing destiny had lost one soul. His memory and consciousness were incomplete. After the completion, no one knew what the next realm was. No one had ever set foot in it. Perhaps it existed 30,000 years ago. However, it had completely disappeared after the Nether King destroyed the world. No one knew the origin of the tomes of arcane. She guessed that it might be helpful for stepping into the next realm. The Scroll of Life was the beginning of the tomes of arcane. It could be integrated and transformed into any cultivation body. For her who had been stuck in the completion realm for hundreds of years, it was very tempting. Now the trouble was that the soul-searching was fruitless. If she wanted to get the Scroll of Life, she had to complete the missing soul of this person and awaken him. However, it was not an easy thing to do. Since ancient times, the 3 souls and 7 spirits had been the most difficult taboo for the human body. Even Nu Chang, who was in the completion realm, could not fully understand it. Perhaps only the existence of the Nether King, who was beyond the world, could see through the secrets. She couldn't create a soul out of thin air. The only thing she could do now was to find the phoenix origin that had disappeared. There was definitely a portion of this person's soul power left there. She had to find a way to complete this incomplete soul. Judging from the aura of the numerous essences when they dispersed, Feng Yuan was flying towards the southwest. There was still a long way to go. She had to make the best use of her time. Otherwise, once this person's vitality dissipated, all her previous efforts would be in vain. Chapter 401. Around the Divine Prefecture, the 4 divine towers connected the sky and the earth. A strange power spread out, and the origin energy between heaven and earth was constantly sent to the other side. It plundered without any care for the consequences, causing the origin energy of this incomplete world to rapidly dry up. After the tribulation of Yama, the number of experts in the divine prefecture fell from its peak to its lowest point. The remaining top experts were too heavily injured in the tribulation, and all of them went into seclusion. It was impossible for them to appear in the near future. On the West Earth, the cultivation of the lords of the divine palace and the demon temple grew stronger and stronger. The dragon gate behind them had completely solidified, surpassing the level that ordinary peak experts could reach. As the two of them grew stronger, the day of the 5 regions merging was getting closer and closer. To truly take the last step, heaven and earth had to be complete, and pulling back the east region was imminent. In the divine prefecture, Great Xia, which had lost 1,000 years of fortune, was already at the end of its days. The martial marquises guarding the various regions had died in battle, and the defense of the entire empire was almost non-existent. In front of benefits that were within reach, the hearts of people became extremely terrifying. In many cities, several city lords who had troops repeatedly disobeyed the orders of the imperial court. Their intention to rebel couldn't be more obvious. A month later, the 9 city lords who had been plotting for a long time finally couldn't hide their ambitions anymore. With the excuse of saving the emperor, they sent troops up north and openly rebelled. When it rains, it pours. After the 9 cities rebelled, another 3 cities rejected the imperial court's orders to mobilize troops. In just half a month, the rebel army consecutively broke through 5 major cities, and was less than 1,000 miles away from the imperial capital of Great Xia. The era of Great Xia is over. Those with discerning eyes in the divine prefecture could see that the change of dynasties was difficult to reverse. After the tribulation of Yama, Great Xia's 1,000 years of foundation had been exhausted. The once invincible empire had finally reached its end. No one could deny that in this divine tribulation, the Great Xia Empire had made the most indelible contribution to the survival of the divine prefecture. They had paid a heavy price by sacrificing all of their peak combat power to send the Lord of Hell back to the 7 ultimate heavens. However, people's hearts were fickle, and only benefits were the eternal truth. Knowing destiny saw through everything, so he would never be swayed by other people's joy, anger, hatred, or resentment. He stuck to his beliefs and had no regrets even in death. With Evernight destroyed and Great Xia in chaos, the divine prefecture had officially entered an era of independent rule. There were no longer any invincible dynasties, and the flames of war were everywhere. The Grand Xia Imperial City, after the divine tribulation, was once the #1 city under the heavens. But now, it was dilapidated to the extreme. The streets were crisscrossed with huge ravines, so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. This was the reality of the imperial city, and even more so, the portrayal of the entire world. Within the imperial city, more than half of the people were dead or injured. Every house was hung with white silk. The imperial army that guarded the imperial city also suffered a devastating blow from the divine tribulation. There were not many survivors. "Empress, we can't hold on any longer." In the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning looked at Zhang Sun, who was sitting on the sickbed with tears in her eyes. "Forget it, I won't fight anymore." Zhang Sun sighed deeply. Since someone wanted the throne, they would give it up. She was already tired, and the soldiers of Great Xia could no longer sacrifice themselves needlessly. Report. At this moment, an urgent report came. The general was kneeling outside the Weiyang Palace, delivering the frontline battle report. The little eunuch took the battle report and hurriedly delivered it to Zhang Sun's bedroom, not daring to tarry for even a moment. Qing Ning went forward to take it and quickly walked back, handing it to Zhang Sun, who was lying on the sickbed. The sealed letter had not been removed yet. Zhang Sun braced himself and tore open the seal. After reading it carefully, he handed it to Qing Ning. "Take a look," Zhang Sun said tiredly. Qing Ning took the letter with a puzzled expression. After reading it, her expression changed. The content of the letter was very simple, but it was indeed a shocking matter. Emperor Beimeng was personally leading a 150,000 army down south. When the letter was delivered, they had already passed Yangue city. Now, they were probably not far from Tianmen Pass. Qing Ning could not hide the shock in her heart. The empress did not ask for help from Beimeng. Furthermore, personal feelings could not decide anything between dynasties. Since they were not reinforcements, the purpose of Beimeng's army going down south was very obvious. They were invading. Ningqian has taught an incredible emperor. Zhang Sun sighed softly. He did not look too surprised. For this little emperor to wait until today to send out his troops, he could already be considered extremely benevolent. Great Xia's luck had run out, and they could not hold on any longer. To Beimeng, this was the best opportunity, a good opportunity to pacify the world. Report. Outside Weiyang Palace, another urgent report came in. The little eunuch who delivered the letter quickly walked over and delivered the letter. The information in the letter was similar to the previous one. The barbarian dynasty had also sent out troops. The barbarian crown prince was leading a 100,000-strong army to the north and would reach the central plains of Great Xia in a few days. In the Divine Prefecture, other than the former Great Xia, the two strongest dynasties had already sent out troops. This meant that the day of Great Xia's destruction was really not far away. Qing Ning, the Divine Prefecture is very likely to be unified, Zhang Sun said weakly. Qing Ning was slightly stunned when she heard this. She could not understand the deeper meaning of Zhang Sun's words. When the world is divided for a long time, it must unite for a long time. The destruction of the Eternal Night sect and the division of Great Xia has given Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty the best opportunity. The rebel army in Great Xia will not be able to do anything. The final winner will be between Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty. After saying this, Zhang Sun took a short break and continued to explain, Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty suffered less damage than Great Xia in the calamity of Yama. It can be said that the two strongest dynasties in the Divine Prefecture are Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty. Comparatively, Beimeng's imperial court is obviously stronger. Therefore, they have the best chance of unifying the world. Empress, is there really no way to salvage the situation in Great Xia? Qing Ning's expression flashed with sadness as she asked. Zhang Sun shook her head tiredly and said, "It's very difficult and there's no need. It's just a matter of time." Great Xia's territory was too big. After suffering such a great calamity, it was already impossible to defend it. Especially after the death of the martial marquises of Great Xia, the deterrence hanging over the hearts of the various factions of Great Xia disappeared. The rebellion was already expected. Great Xia no longer had the power to unify the fragmented territory again. The day of a change of dynasty would come sooner or later. While the Divine Prefecture was in chaos, in the homeland of West Buddha, in the Divine Palace and the Demon Temple, two unusually powerful auras were getting more and more terrifying by the day. They were very close to taking the final step. "Demon Buddha, are you ready?" In the Divine Palace, a cold and arrogant voice came out, crossing thousands of miles and reaching the Demon Temple. "We can do it at any time," the Demon Buddha in the Demon Temple replied. "Then let's begin." As the voice fell, at the highest point of the Divine Palace, the huge palace door opened. A figure shining with purple light walked out. The heavy pressure made all things fall. It was powerful and terrifying. At the same time, in the Demon Temple, the Demon Buddha also walked out. His aura was not inferior to the Lord of the Divine Palace. The demonic power of Buddha made people feel cold all over. The two venerables joined forces, and the Dragon Gate appeared between heaven and earth. The powerful force penetrated heaven and earth and reached the foreign domain. In the Divine Prefecture, heaven and earth trembled. The rumbling sound resounded through the eastern region. The Four Corners Divine Pagoda showed its divine power and pulled the ground below toward the direction of the four domains. The indescribably terrifying scene shocked the whole world. No one knew what had happened, and they could not change anything. They could only watch the ground rise and move toward an unknown direction. In the southwest territory of the Divine Prefecture, Nu Chang's face darkened. She looked at the homeland of West Buddha in the distance, and her eyes flashed with coldness. This was good. With the 5 regions united, she could use the power of the original body to wake up the Marquis Jiming and obtain the Book of Life and the other heavenly tomes. 500 miles south of Yengue City, the northern Meng army stopped. In front of the terrifying tremors, the warhorses kept neighing and were difficult to control. In front of 90,000 cavalrymen, Mingyu, dressed in martial attire, dismounted. Looking at the divine prefecture brought by the Four Corners Divine Pagoda, her eyes were full of coldness. The foreign domain's movements were getting bigger and bigger. She also had to speed up. The situation of Great Xia was irreversible. Instead of chaos, it was better to take down Great Xia before it happened and end this war. The tremors continued for an hour. When it finally stopped, the world returned to normal. It was as if nothing had happened. Just when everyone thought that it was over, an earth-shattering rumble shook the sky. The entire eastern domain shook, and at the end of the world, a huge piece of land crashed into the spatial barrier that separated the 5 regions. In the next moment, the most terrifying scene occurred. Space collapsed, and an endless amount of seawater poured in from the foreign domain, causing the entire eastern region to float. The 5 regions that had been separated for over 30,000 years were finally united. The southern tomb, the western earth, the central plains, and the northern plains all sensed it at the same time. Their experts all looked toward the east in shock. In the central plains, in the depths of the Zhao family's territory, the Zhao family's experts opened their eyes and looked toward the east. There's still a bow left in the eastern region. We need to send people to retrieve it, said one of the Zhao family's grand elders. Let Dongyang go. It's a good chance for him to temper himself, said another grand elder. In the northern plains, where snow filled the sky, there was a palace built on top of ice and snow. A cold voice rang out, echoing for hundreds of miles. Pass down my order. From today onwards, all disciples who are training outside must return within 10 days. There must be no delays. Yes. In the southern tomb, many mysterious ancient inheritances also took action. They sent out orders to prepare for the return of the eastern region. In the divine prefecture, the great earthquake stopped. People who had not realized what kind of earth-shattering event had happened breathed a sigh of relief. Only a few people who knew the inside story had a serious look on their faces. They understood that the real trouble had just begun. With the 5 regions united, the divine prefecture was undoubtedly the weakest region. No one knew what the future would be like. Speed up the march, ordered Mingyu coldly in the northern plains of Great Xia. The 4 generals obeyed. After the order was given, the entire army immediately moved out and sped up. The successive changes came and went quickly. Very few people knew what had happened, and most people were still in the dark. However, at this moment, the divine prefecture needed to unite as soon as possible to face the unpredictable troubles in the future more than ever. Chapter 402. The flames of war were everywhere in the divine continent. More and more cities rebelled. The barbarian dynasty and northern Meng sent out their troops from the north and south at the same time. The era of Grand Xia had come to an end. A divine tribulation had destroyed Evernight, and Grand Xia had withered away. The situation of 2 great powers standing on equal footing was now a thing of the past. The divine prefecture was now in a state of fragmentation. War raged everywhere, and the people had no way to make a living. Mingyu led 150,000 soldiers down south. The 90,000 cavalry were invincible, trampling over all obstacles. Neither the rebels nor the defenders could stop them. Mingyu was good at fighting but not fond of fighting. As the emperor of the northern Meng dynasty who had been taught by Fan Lingyue and Ning Chen, his understanding of war was not something ordinary people could reach. With the help of the 4 generals, the speed at which he went down south was shockingly fast. The northern Meng dynasty was different from the Great Xia in the Central Plains. The grasslands in the north were vast and sparsely populated. They were a nomadic fighting race. The destruction they suffered from this divine tribulation did not affect their foundation. Today, there was no dynasty in the world that could stop the powerful cavalry of the northern Meng dynasty. The barbarian dynasty also knew this fact, so they were doing their best to expand and plunder war resources to strengthen themselves. The teacher's prophecy was about to come true. The destruction of the Great Xia was close at hand. Without the appearance of the nobles, the soldiers of the Great Xia were at a disadvantage in both numbers and morale. Although Marquis Anling had the title of Martial Marquis, everyone knew that the true Martial Marquis of the Great Xia had all died in battle during the tribulation of the Underworld King. The Martial Marquis of the Great Xia that had shocked the world for 1,000 years no longer existed. It's hard to believe that such a declining dynasty could hold on for 1,000 years. In the war-torn Great Xia, merchants dressed differently from the people of the Divine Continent appeared one after another. The young man in the lead was wearing luxurious clothes. His eyes were a rare dark green. One could tell at a glance that he was a rich young master from a foreign country. "Young master, what you see may not be the truth," a stooped old man beside the young man warned softly. "Ah, Uncle Ling is right. However, we're only here to do business. Earning enough money is the most important thing. Everything else is not important to us," Xian Liangchen laughed and said carelessly. "Only by earning money can you redeem Miss Susu of the White Knight building. Isn't that right, young master?" Beside him, a young man dressed like a servant joked. "Ah Chi, you're so young, but you're already so bad. I like Miss Jichi. I don't know Miss Susu you're talking about." Xian Liangchen deliberately pulled a long face and said softly. The young man named Achi wasn't afraid. He grinned and didn't believe a single punctuation mark of his young master's words. "Speaking of the eastern region, it's a bit messy, but there are really a lot of rare things, especially this thing called soap. It's simply shining silver." Xian Liangchen's serious expression did not last for more than 3 seconds. When it came to silver, his face was full of smiles, and he was so happy that no one knew where to go. "I heard that it was invented by a Marquis of Great Xia." Ah Chi also said with a grin. "Marquis Jiming," the old man said calmly. "Yes, the Marquis of Jiming." Uncle Ling, how do you remember him so clearly?" A look of surprise flashed across Ah Chi's face. Didn't Uncle Ling never care about these things? Young Master Xian was also curious about this. He turned his face and waited for the answer. However, the old man fell silent and didn't say anything more. The curiosity of the two was stuck in their throats. It was itchy, but they couldn't catch it. The 2 young men raised their middle fingers at the same time in their hearts, but neither of them dared to show it. They still had idiotic smiles on their faces. Their smiles were so annoying. At the same time, in the southwest territory of the Divine Land, Niu Chang had been looking for Feng Yuan for more than a month. She had almost turned the whole southwest territory upside down, but she still hadn't found it. "Has the host been found?" Niu Chang frowned. Now this was the only explanation. Otherwise, she should have been able to find Feng Yuan's aura. Troublesome. She thought for a moment, then took a step forward and rose into the air. Her body rose to the extreme, and a terrifying aura that was close to the Xiantian full circle spread out. The powerful pressure made all living creatures within 100 miles tremble. Soul of the dead. With a cold shout, a terrifying move came crashing down. In an instant, all the creatures within 100 miles exploded. Blood rained down and dyed the sky red. Without Feng Yuan, tens of thousands of creatures were buried with it. Niu Chang's spiritual sense swept over and didn't find anything unusual. She immediately left and went to other places to search. On this day, rivers of blood flowed in the southwest territory of the Divine Land. Apart from humans, almost all the creatures were wiped out. Everywhere one looked was a dazzling red. Phoenixes were noble and prideful, and hated humans. Therefore, the last host it would choose was a human. Niu Chang didn't know how Ji Ming was recognized by Feng Yuan, but this kind of exception wouldn't appear again. Found it. Just as the moon was high in the sky, a trace of golden light appeared in the rain of blood. Niu Chang narrowed her eyes and rushed forward. She waved her hand and suppressed Feng Yuan. Ji Ming, you're not fated to die. Feeling the remnant soul in Feng Yuan, Niu Chang's heart relaxed. She took a step and flew east. With this remnant soul and the power of the soul-suppressing orb, she might be able to save him. In order to save this person, she had paid a huge price. She couldn't fail. At the old site of the academy, Niu Chang appeared. She waved her hand to disperse the restriction outside the wooden house and walked in. Under the soul-suppressing orb, Ji Ming was sleeping peacefully. In order to resist the Nether King, he sacrificed his lifespan. His white hair was dazzling. He had been running around for his entire life, and this was the only time he could stop and rest. Niu Chang walked forward and condensed her essence into Ji Ming's body. When the Feng Yuan entered the body, a rejection appeared. It wasn't that Feng Yuan didn't want to recognize its master, but the rejection from the body made it difficult to merge with the Feng Yuan. In the past, with the power of the life scroll, he could forcefully suppress the rejection. However, in the Battle of Qizhou Mountain, in order to deal with the threat of the Nether King's dual Qi Seas, Ning Qin used a forbidden move. Niu Chang frowned again. Trouble came one after another. She didn't know how the knowing destiny Marquis had endured this pain in the past. Vital essence entered, and a majestic aura suppressed the rejection from the Feng Yuan and the knowing destiny physique. At the same time, in the homeland of Western Buddha, Changling, a terrifying aura walked out. In the next moment, it headed east. Niu Chang appeared. In the homeland of Western Buddha, many perfected cultivators felt it and showed strange expressions. In the Eastern Divine Lands, an ancient sage-level cultivator came in person. The terrifying pressure shocked the world and made people think that the Nether King had come again. The figure of light whose face couldn't be seen clearly stood at the top of the human race. Accompanied by apparitions, her peerless beauty made it hard for people to look away. The most mysterious Changling Niu Chang of the West Earth rarely appeared. Today, in order to replenish knowing destiny's remnant soul, she appeared. When Niu Chang attacked, the Divine Lands shook. Streams of light gathered in the academy from all directions. The soul-suppressing orb was extremely bright and forcefully gathered the remnant soul of knowing destiny. Crack. A moment later, a crack appeared on the soul-suppressing orb. The act of replenishing the soul against the heavens was not tolerated by the world. The treasure of Changling couldn't bear such a huge burden and gradually showed signs of collapse. In a bet, Niu Chang saved knowing destiny's life at all costs. No one knew the result, but in order to take the next step after perfection, the price had to be paid. As time passed, more and more cracks appeared on the soul-suppressing orb. Finally, with a bang, the treasure collapsed and disappeared. The number of remnant souls gathered was unknown. Niu Chang looked at knowing destiny who was still unconscious on the bed. Light flashed in her eyes. She had tried her best. Whether he could wake up or not depended on his luck. In the next moment, the terrifying pressure that descended on the Divine Lands left and returned to the homeland of Western Buddha. Niu Chang appeared in the Marquis manor. After sending knowing destiny back, she disappeared again. At dawn, Ruoshi came to Ning Chen's room to clean as usual. When she saw the sleeping figure on the bed, her delicate body trembled violently and the wooden basin in her hand fell with a clang. Marquis. Ruoxi ignored her soaked clothes and quickly stepped forward to check on Ning Chen's condition. In the room next door, Ning Shi heard the movement from next door and immediately rushed over. The scene in front of her was unbelievable. Ning Chen's breath was stable and long. Although he hadn't woken up yet, his life was obviously not in danger. Outside the Marquis manor, Niu Cheng quietly looked at the manor. Perhaps, this person will wake up faster here. In the homeland of Western Buddha, a man, who had been unconscious for a long time, woke up earlier than Ning Chen. Sitting on the bed, she looked at the black medicine brought by the little monk in front of her and was unwilling to drink it. "Senior, I'm already well. Can I not drink it?" A man turned her small head and looked at the man in blue not far away. "No." Prince Yen directly denied without thinking. "Oh." A man's small face was bitter. She reluctantly responded and took the medicine in front of her. Gathering her courage, she closed her eyes and drank it all in one breath. "Bitter." A man put down the medicine bowl and looked at Prince Yen again. Prince Yen helplessly stepped forward and handed over a pear. In this world, only this little girl dared to order him around. "Thank you, Senior." A man took the pear and smiled sweetly. Her bright and beautiful face made the little monk on the side look dazed. After he recovered, he hurriedly chanted Amitabha. "Buddha, please don't blame me. Little benefactor man, how is your recovery?" At this time, the golden light gathered and the light sage appeared. Holding the holy staff, he calmed the smoke. Stepping on the Buddhist light, he looked too young no matter when you looked at him. "I'm already well." A man replied. Looking at the young light sage and the bald little monk in front of her, her eyes flashed with a touch of doubt. Why can a monk not have a head? The little girl's thoughts were so obvious that it was difficult to not guess. The light sage smiled gently. If the hearts of the people in the world were as clean as the little girl in front of him, perhaps that Hell King would not come again. Chapter 403. Grand Xia Imperial City, Ximing Manor. Early in the morning, Ruoxi helped the unconscious Ning Chen into a wheelchair and pushed him out of the room. The warm rays of the morning sun shone down on people's bodies. It was warm, dispelling the cold of the night. The sky was clear, and the responsibility of the knowing destiny state was over. The Eternal Night sect was destroyed, and Lord Yama was sent back. The knowing destiny state, who had been busy all his life, could finally rest. The flames of war broke the Xia dynasty apart. It was time for a change of dynasty, but the Weiyang Palace and the knowing destiny state were more peaceful than ever. People were tired and didn't want to fight anymore. The cavalry of the Northern Meng royal court, the vanguard of the barbarian dynasty, and the rebel army of the Xia dynasty were advancing at an amazing speed. They didn't encounter much resistance and were very close to the Xia dynasty's imperial city. After a series of disasters, the people of the world hated war and prayed for peace more than ever. Maybe peace would come after the Xia dynasty was defeated. Would it be like this? No one knew. According to the headmaster's deduction, the great Xia dynasty should have perished long ago. Perhaps it was during Fan Lingyue's southern expedition, or during the Eternal Night sect's eastern expedition, or when Yama descended. It was already an incredible miracle that this thousand-year-old dynasty could survive until today. It was impossible for any empire to last forever. Great Xia had flourished for 1,000 years, and it was the result of the efforts of generations of wise rulers and generations of marquises. Now that the wise ruler was gone, the era of Great Xia had come to an end. At the same time, a figure from a foreign land stepped into the eastern region. He was wearing blue clothes and had an extraordinary appearance. He approached the knowing destiny state step by step. The genius of the Zhao clan, the son of Dongsheng, was a peerless genius whose talent was not inferior to Luo Xingqian's. He was one of the most promising candidates for the divine bow of the Great Sun. He came into the world today just to find a bough left behind by the Zhao clan in the eastern region 30,000 years ago. A dynasty without fate. Ridiculous. In the royal capital of Grand Xia, 1,000 miles away, another young man walked over. His countenance was filled with arrogance and disdain. However, the aura he exuded was so powerful that it pierced the bones. Even before he got close, he could already feel the heavy pressure. The genius of the Shao clan, Yang Shao, was one of the peerless geniuses on par with Dong Yang of the Zhao clan. No one knew why he appeared in the eastern region. Ding! The sound of the zither was heard, and the rain of flowers fell. In a flying sedan with a gauze curtain, a fairy was playing the zither. A beautiful girl from an unknown place also appeared in the divine land. She headed east and disappeared in the blink of an eye. One after another, extraordinary geniuses stepped onto the road of the divine lands at the same time. Surprisingly, they all had the same goal. Great Xia Imperial City, Manor of Jiming Marquis. The royal city of Grand Xia was the center of the storm. The rebel army of the 9 cities, the Northern Meng Iron Cavalry, and the army of the barbarian dynasty had all arrived at the foot of the royal city. Each of them harbored different thoughts as they coldly stared at the royal city in front of them. With a single command, they would be able to end this powerful empire that had flourished for thousands of years. Within the imperial city, camp after camp of guards stood guard at the various city gates. Anling Marquis' eyes were filled with despair. Great Xia was finished. In front of the city, Mingyu got off her horse. Her delicate body seemed so extraordinary at this moment. She walked to the foot of the city and looked at the city in front of her. A hint of sadness flashed across her exquisite face. "Purple Crystal, accompany me into the city," Mingyu said softly. "Yes." Purple Crystal nodded. She waved her hand and brought along the emperor beside her. Then, she turned into a stream of light and entered the city. At the same time, Crown Prince Barbarian and Ascientian Venerate also entered the royal city. State affairs were state affairs, and personal relationships were personal relationships. Before the final attack, they had to go see someone first. In front of the Jiming Marquis mansion, the gate opened wide. Ruoshi pushed Ning Chen out. She looked at the barbarian dynasty and the Northern Meng dynasty's leaders. There wasn't the slightest fear on her beautiful face. Mingyu walked forward. Her eyes glimmered with tears as she softly said, "Bad people, do you blame me?" The Grand Xia's destiny had run out. The strength of the rebel cities wasn't much different. They would definitely fight for the throne again. When that time came, the world would be in chaos. If they wanted to quell this war as soon as possible, the Northern Meng dynasty's best choice was to send troops. To the side, Crown Prince Barbarian looked at the white-clothed figure sleeping in the wheelchair and sighed. Although he was dissatisfied with this kid because of Wild's matter, he couldn't deny that the Grand Xia's Jiming Marquis was the most worthy person in the world. Crown Prince Barbarian turned and left. Before leaving, he glanced at Mingyu and coldly said, "Emperor of the Northern Meng dynasty, it will soon be clear who this world belongs to. I'll accompany you to the end." Mingyu wiped away her tears. Her expression also became cold. The two left and returned to their respective armies. The siege had officially begun. The 3 sides had tacitly decided to first take down the Grand Xia and then have a showdown. Within the royal city, 100,000 imperial guards were desperately resisting. Thousands of miles away, reinforcements from Qinghe City, Tianfu City, Huaqing City, and the other cities of the Grand Xia were desperately rushing to the royal city. However, distant water couldn't quench the immediate thirst. The reinforcements from the various cities had arrived too late. In one day and one night, the Grand Xia's imperial guards had suffered heavy casualties. The 3 sides had also suffered heavy casualties. The Grand Xia's royal city, which had stood for 1,000 years, was about to be breached. How lively! Just as the Grand Xia's royal city was about to be breached, a gray-robed youth appeared in the sky. He ignored the rain of arrows and walked into the royal city. Within the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning sensed this sudden powerful aura and her expression changed. She rushed over to the Marquis Manor. Qing Ning hurried over to the backyard of the Marquis Manor. Seeing the gray-robed youth appear in the sky, her expression was incomparably grave. "Ruoshi, Ningshi, quickly take him away," said Qing Ning. "Where can you go?" Space shook and blue light gathered. Another powerful aura descended. The Zhao family's Dongyang appeared in the sky above the Marquis Manor. "So the two of you are here." The sound of a zither was faint, and a rain of flowers drifted down. A flying carriage with gauze curtains appeared in the sky. The woman within spoke, her voice like a clear spring. "Wu Qingman. Ha! Who would have thought that the Heavenly Music Pavilion, which has always thought highly of itself, would also take advantage of the situation?" Yang Xiao, the prodigy of the owl race who had arrived first, sneered coldly. "Brother Yang, you're exaggerating." "I'm just following my master's orders to invite this marquis back to the Heavenly Music Valley as a guest," said Wu Qingman with a faint smile. Hearing the former's explanation, Yang Xiao coldly snorted. If he believed this nonsense, he would be a fool. Not far away, Zhao Dongyang wasn't in the mood to pay attention to their nonsense. He landed and looked at the people in the Marquis Manor. He calmly asked, "Where's the broken death bow?" "Hey, Brother Zhao, there should be a first come, first served rule. Why don't you ask after I finish asking?" As he spoke, Yang Zhao's figure flashed and landed below. He glanced at the people in front of him and smiled. "Hand over the heavenly book, and I'll try not to kill all of you." "In your dreams," said Qing Ning coldly. "I like uncooperative people." Yang Xiao sneered and took a step forward. He instantly closed in and clawed with 3 fingers. Qing Ning brandished her spear and retreated several steps with a bang. A trace of red flowed down the corner of her mouth. A 5th tribulation eminence against a 3 calamity eminence wasn't on the same level. There was no suspense in this battle from the beginning. "Brother Yang, bullying a woman doesn't seem like the conduct of a gentleman," said Wu Qingman with a chuckle. "Oh, is that so?" In an instant, the sword broke through the restriction of the 2 palms and penetrated the former's chest. The sudden change made everyone present unable to react. Yang Zhao's mouth was overflowing with blood. He reached out and grabbed the sword in front of his chest. He turned his palm and forced a counterattack. Ning Chen's mouth slightly raised. The sword's momentum changed and directly sent the former flying. Ugh! Yang Xiao landed on the ground and barely managed to stabilize his body. He vomited another mouthful of blood. "Miss, my family's womenfolk have not received you well and have neglected you. However, I will discipline them for their mistakes. Can you stop playing the zither?" Ning Chen raised his head and looked at the woman on the palanquin in the sky. Inside the gauze curtain, Wu Qingman reached out and pressed the strings of the zither. Drops of blood silently dripped from the corner of her mouth. On the zither cast in black gold, a clear sword mark appeared unknowingly. It penetrated the body of the zither and was unusually dazzling. Chapter 404. Knowing destiny had awakened, and the power of the sword shocked everyone present. His robes fluttered in the wind. He had finally awakened at the most critical moment. After the divine tribulation, most of the remaining cultivators of the divine prefecture had been in seclusion, which gave the outsiders a chance to invade. However, even a tiger who had fallen from grace could not be bullied by a dog. The murderous intent on the knowing destiny sword was so cold that it sent chills down people's spines. The divine weapon that had once been stained with the blood of the gods had appeared again. Although the original aura had not been released, it had already frightened the 3 present. "Jiming Marquis, do you really think you can stop the 3 of us by yourself?" Wu Qingman's expression turned cold as she spoke. "Is it very difficult?" Ning Chen raised his head and looked at her with a half-smile. It seemed like he was looking down on her and ignoring her. Wu Qingman's heart skipped a beat, and her face was extremely ugly. She had seen many arrogant people, but it was the first time she saw someone who dared to be so arrogant in the face of 3 cultivators. Zhao Dongyang narrowed his eyes. The knowing destiny Marquis of the Great Xia deserved his reputation. With a wave of his hand, the sun drew the bow. Rays of light from the arrows flew out directly toward the people in front of him. The blazing fire surged in the light of the arrows. Every inch forward, the arrows became stronger. Sword form, Nirvana. Ning Chen waved his sword, and rays of light appeared and turned into a sword flow. The majestic sword will came out easily. The power of the Nirvana sword was earth-shattering. It instantly destroyed the arrows in the way and continued to fly forward. The sword will was unparalleled. Zhao Dongyang and Yang Shao were enveloped by it at the same time. They had no choice but to work together to block the Nirvana sword. The 2 of them blocked the sword, but after a loud bang, they both took 3 steps back. Blood dripped from the corners of their mouths. After being defeated in one move, the 2 geniuses of the younger generation found it hard to accept. Enduring their injuries, they forcefully circulated their quintessence and gathered the wind and clouds in all directions. Immediately, the wind howled and the city walls were set ablaze. A powerful move was unleashed. The wind helped the fire. The 2 moves flowed together and attacked the knowing destiny sword. The powerful power could burn the sky and boil the sea. Ning Chen stood still like a mountain. The origin spread out from his sword. Endless cold chi spread out at an extremely fast speed. He blocked out the incoming attacks with his sword. The sharp sword intent shot out through the fiery light, blowing away the 2 warriors in front of him again. Blood dripped from their bodies. Before the knowing destiny sword, the owl could not spread its wings, and the sun could not rise from the east. In the sky, Wu Qingman saw that the situation was unfavorable. She plucked the zither strings with both hands. Wave after wave of zither waves spread out. Immediately, the earth rumbled and trembled. Yellow soil flew up and leaves fell like rain. The sound of the zither came from all directions, trapping the knowing destiny state cultivators. However, at this moment, Sui flashed and disappeared. In this world, there might be someone who could seal the knowing destiny state cultivator's spiritual awareness, but it was definitely not Wu Qingman. The white-clothed figure hovered in the air. The cold sword in his hand was placed beside the woman's neck. Threads of vermilion dyed the sword edge red. If it had been half an inch more, she would have died. Wu Qingman's body trembled. Her eyes flashed with disbelief. She couldn't understand why the difference in strength between them was so great. Knowing destiny Marquis, spare her life. Consider it as giving me face. At this moment, Nu Chang arrived and appeared on the battlefield. Ning Chen glanced at Nu Chang and moved his sword away. He didn't want to kill her again. Although his consciousness wasn't complete when he was unconscious, he could still sense the aura of the person who saved him. The arrival of Nu Chang shocked everyone again. The terrifying pressure from the woman in front of them wasn't something an ordinary 3 disaster stage cultivator could possess. Let's go. Zhao Dongyang and Yang Shao knew it was impossible to gain anything today. Their feet moved and they quickly retreated. Wu Qingman coldly snorted. With a wave of her delicate hand, the carriage flew out and also quickly went away. After the 3 left, Ning Chen nodded to Nu Chang. Miss, please wait a moment. I still have some small matters to deal with. As soon as his voice fell, Ning Chen calmly looked at Ruo Shi, who was gradually waking up from her daze. Ruo Shi, change clothes. Ruo Shi covered the tears in her eyes and nodded. She immediately walked into a side room and took out a wooden box that hadn't been touched for a long time. After opening it, a blue Marquis robe was lying inside. It symbolized the glory of the Marquis for 1,000 years. Today, it finally reappeared in the world. After taking out the robe, Roashi helped the Marquis change out of his plain robe and into a blue robe. Her purple hair was tied behind her back. It was simple and plain. After changing clothes, knowing destiny didn't delay any longer and stepped away. Outside the Imperial City, the three sides were still attacking. The Imperial City was in imminent danger and had reached the final juncture. The flames of war had burned away the crowns of the Grand Xia soldiers. Facing the attacks of three sides, it was difficult for them to hold on. Despair appeared on the faces of the soldiers. If the Grand Xia fell, how would they face the Marquis who sacrificed their lives for the Grand Xia in the underworld? With a rumble, the giant tree once again hit the city gate. The sound of breaking rang out, announcing the end of the Grand Xia. The faces of the 9 city lords were filled with joy. The day they had waited for had finally arrived. At this moment, Sword Intent descended from the sky and directly cut open the land between the Imperial City and the three sides. One sword forbade martial arts, and the world stopped war. The next moment, a blue figure appeared in the sky. The most familiar face made everyone's heart tremble. "Welcome, Marquis." The guards of the Grand Xia were the first to react. Their faces were filled with joy as they knelt down to welcome the arrival of the Marquis. The appearance of knowing destiny shocked everyone. The blue Marquis robe fluttered in the wind, affecting the hearts of everyone below. "Mingyu, Crown Prince, please withdraw your troops." The understated words didn't carry a trace of threat, but the calmness made people dare not refute. Knowing destiny, the long-disappeared Marquis of the Grand Xia had returned today. A trace of joy appeared in Mingyu's eyes, but she immediately concealed it without leaving a trace. She raised her hand and stopped the northern Meng soldiers from continuing to attack the city. Crown Prince Barbarian narrowed his eyes and waved his halberd, blocking the soldiers behind him who were about to charge out. He hadn't thought that he would wake up at this time. On the other side, the 9 city lords saw the figure floating in the sky. Their faces were incomparably gloomy. Hadn't the Marquis all died in battle? Why was the Knowing Destiny Marquis still alive? Knowing Destiny Marquis. The expressions of the soldiers behind the 9 city lords changed. They couldn't help but tremble in fear. Under the heavens, the person they were most afraid of meeting was undoubtedly the Marquis in the sky. In the Grand Xia, from the nobles to the commoners, they all respected the Marquis more than they feared him. However, there was only one exception, and that was the Knowing Destiny Marquis. Towards this Marquis who had single-handedly slaughtered an entire city of rebels, fear had already been deeply imprinted in the hearts of every citizen of the Grand Xia. It was difficult to get rid of it. Amongst the rebel army of the 9 cities, there were many young people from Great Wisdom City. When they saw the Knowing Destiny Marquis appear, their legs unconsciously trembled and they knelt down. One person knelt down, then everyone knelt down. Under fear, large groups of rebel army knelt down and lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at the figure in the sky. It was an unpredictable situation. Amongst the 9 city lords, one of the city lords finally wavered. His body trembled as he got off his horse and knelt down as well. "Wang Qiu, you piece of trash. He's only one person. What's there to be afraid of?" Beside him, a middle-aged man with a bloody scar on his face scolded angrily. The kneeling city lord didn't reply. He only lowered his head deeply. In front of his life, nothing else was important. However, anyone who had personally witnessed the hellish state of Great Wisdom City would definitely not doubt that if they continued to resist, the Knowing Destiny Marquis wouldn't be ruthless enough to kill them all. Ning Chen turned around and looked at the rebel army of the 9 cities in front of the west gate. He said indifferently, "Retreat or all of you stay here. Attack the city." The middle-aged man coldly snorted. He ignored him and gave the order to continue attacking the city. Under his orders, the soldiers once again carried siege weapons and ran out, continuing to attack the city. "Stupid. Mingyu and Crown Prince Man looked at the commotion at the west gate. A cold smile flashed through their eyes. Those who were blinded by power could no longer see the situation in front of them clearly. The moment the order was given, the azure-robed figure in the sky also moved. He waved the weapon in his hand. Immediately, an extremely terrifying sword light shot out. 100 zhang-wide gust of wind followed like a shadow, shaking the heavens and the earth. Whoosh! Wherever the sword passed, thousands of heads flew up. Blood spurted out and dyed the sky red. On the war horse, the middle-aged man's body was directly split in two. He fell off the horse with a bang. Such a terrifying scene scared out of the soldiers behind him. Marquis, please spare us. There was no more luck. One by one, figures filled with fear knelt down. They lowered their heads and trembled incessantly. It was an unimaginable reversal. The situation of the three sides surrounding the city collapsed in an instant because of the appearance of one person. The ground was filled with corpses that were separated from their bodies. The ruthlessness of the knowing destiny Marquis once again shocked the world. Kang Yu, bring the city lords and generals into the city for tea. Don't neglect them. Ning Chen glanced at Kang Yu on the west gate tower and said calmly. Yes. Kang Yu knelt down and respectfully accepted the order. The show is over. You can all disperse. Ning Chen looked at Mingyu and Crown Prince Man and said. Retreat. The two of them waved their hands and ordered the troops to retreat. Now that the knowing destiny Marquis had awakened, the Great Xia would not be destroyed. Even if they forcefully attacked the city, they would only end up like the rebels of the 9 cities. Mingyu, you did well. Ning Chen transmitted his voice. There was no blame in his words. The chaos of the Great Xia was the source of the flames of war. Mingyu was not wrong to send troops at this time. To be able to fight all the way here before the rebels of the 9 cities took down the imperial city meant that his and Fan Lingyue's teachings were not in vain. Hearing the former's voice, Mingyu's anxious heart finally relaxed. She turned around and smiled brightly like a blooming flower. Crown Prince Man led the army and left without looking back. In this war, they had obtained all the resources they should have obtained. It was enough to raise the barbarian dynasty's national strength to another level. With a tacit understanding, Ning Chen did not pursue this matter. Now that the Great Xia was weak, it was impossible for them to be as unyielding as before. After doing what he had to do, Ning Chen did not stay any longer. He waved his hand and put away his sword. He took a step forward and left the horizon. With the departure of the knowing destiny Marquis, the heavy pressure disappeared. However, the fear that suppressed the deepest part of everyone's hearts was like the headless corpses on the ground, unable to dissipate. Chapter 405. In the manor, Ning Chen returned. After washing his hands and changing into his regular clothes, he immediately came to the study where Ruo Chang was waiting. After serving the house's best tea, Ruo Shi retreated and didn't disturb the two's conversation. May I ask how I should address you? Ning Chen asked with a smile on his face. Chang Yu. Nu Chang looked at the person in front of her and said calmly. She was present at the scene of the battle to send the Nether King back. She knew very well how cold this seemingly amiable young man was. At that time, the million rays of blood light were real living souls. Ruthless to others and even more ruthless to himself. Unfathomable, this was her evaluation of the young man in front of her. However, Ruo Chang also knows that although Ji Ming is fickle, he cherishes the people around him very much. Even more important than his own life. Good name. Ning Chen smiled gently and immediately continued, in order to save this one, I've made Miss Chang Yu spend a lot of money. He was clearer than anyone about his situation at that time. His soul had dispersed, his cultivation was crippled, and his vitality had dried up. Practically half of his body had been buried in the earth. It was obvious what sort of enormous price Chang Yu had paid to save him. Expensive? Ha, it's quite a lot. 1 soul-suppressing pearl, 3 heaven reversal pills, and my realm's female supreme personally came to help you gather your soul and extend your life with the heaven reversal technique. As for the other heavenly materials and earthly treasures, I won't count them one by one. The woman picked up the teacup, took a sip, and said indifferently. Hearing the woman in front of him, Ning Chen's hand holding the teacup trembled slightly. This favor seems to be a bit too big. Miss, are we friends? Ning Chen put down the tea in his hand and seriously asked. Not really. Chang Yu denied it directly with a strange smile on her face. She said, Jiming Marquis, don't think that I don't know anything about you these days. It's really not easy to be your friend. Chang Yu doesn't have this good fortune. There are a lot of people who died because of this kid. To be his friend, not only do you need to be careful, but you also need to be very lucky. Ning Chen smiled helplessly. It turns out that his reputation has become so bad. The reason I saved you is to get the heavenly book. It's a fair trade. Ruo Chang Yu didn't beat around the bush and directly said. Which scroll? Ning Chen also became serious and asked. The Bright Chaos Scroll had already been destroyed in the final battle with the Underworld King. Other than Wan Fengchen and the others, no one knew that he had the Void Scroll. Thus, the heavenly tomes that Chang Yu wanted should be in the Heaven, Earth, and Life Scrolls. The Heaven Scroll and the Life Scroll, Nu Chang calmly said. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. Soon after, he sighed deeply in his heart. The thing that he was most worried about had happened. Miss Chang Yu, I can silently give you the Heaven Scroll, but not the Life Scroll. This scroll was given to me by someone else. Back then, I might have promised that I wouldn't let anyone else read it. Miss, can you change your condition? Ning Chen earnestly asked. No, we can't do it without either of them, said the woman indifferently as she drank her tea. Ning Chen frowned. He thought for a moment, then raised his head and asked, May I ask why you want the Life Scroll? There were tens of thousands of cultivation techniques in the world, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. The heavenly tomes were not suitable for everyone. Chang Yu had paid such a huge price to save him. If it was just for one more cultivation technique, it was not worth it. There's no harm in telling you. I need to borrow the Life Scroll's special attribute to fuse with any cultivation technique to break through to the Great Circle realm. Nu Chang honestly replied. As for the second half of her sentence, she suppressed it in her heart. Once both of them reached the Great Circle realm, she could attempt to step into the next realm, a realm that no one had ever stepped into before. Ning Chen was silent. After a long time, he said, Miss Chang Yu, since what you need is the Life Scroll's true essence and not a cultivation technique, then before you reach the Great Circle realm, you'll have to take the Life Scroll's cultivation technique from me. For the sake of a promise, you'll have to sacrifice your future freedom. Is it worth it? Nu Chang's eyes flashed. She didn't care who cultivated the Life Scroll. Even if she cultivated it, she would have to start from the beginning just like him. The difference in speed wouldn't be too great. Moreover, this person had already cultivated it once. If he cultivated it again, it might be even faster. It's not a question of whether it's worth it or not. Since I've promised, I should do it. This is a matter of course, replied Ning Chen. Nu Chang didn't try to persuade him any further. She indifferently said, then you should prepare. We'll leave tomorrow for the homeland of Western Buddha. Ning Chen silently nodded. Nu Chang Yu didn't say anything. She put down her teacup and walked out of the study. When she was about to leave, she paused and earnestly said, the dual transformation technique isn't omnipotent. You have too much karma on you. Each tribulation in the future will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. After all, your avatar isn't as good as your main body. If it's destroyed by heavenly tribulation, I won't be able to save you. At that time, I won't hesitate to use a soul-searching technique to extract the life scroll's cultivation technique before your consciousness fades. Nu Changyu walked out of the study and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ning Chen gently sighed and walked over to the bookshelf. He pushed open the door and walked in. Within the coffin made of ice and snow, the ghost woman was still unconscious. Her beautiful face was calm and serene, as if she were sleeping. The ghost origin had returned, and the three souls were complete. But for some unknown reason, the woman in the coffin was still unable to wake up. Ning Chen's eyes were filled with pain. When would he ever be able to repay the debt he owed her in this life? Inside the stone room, Su Yi stood quietly for the whole night. When dawn came the next day, Ji Ming walked out without saying goodbye to anyone and left with Nu Changyu. In the study, Ji Ming stayed behind and transformed into an avatar. As usual, he sat there quietly and thought about things. There was no difference from before. Marquis, it's time to go to the palace and pay respects to the lady. Ruoshi knocked on the door of the study and immediately pushed it open. Ning Chen got up. Time stopped at this moment, turning into a microcosm of the future. Day after day, 7 years, nothing changed. Time flew by like a shuttle. 7 years passed in the blink of an eye. Qi succeeded the throne, Zhang Sun returned to the throne, Kang Yu became a marquis. Everything in the Grand Xia moved forward step by step. Although it wasn't as prosperous as before, due to the existence of Ji Ming, there were no more rebellions. Ning Shi left the manor and with the etiquette of a princess, she was betrothed to the son of Taiping Marquis who was beaten by Ning Chen. After the upheaval in his family, the former playboy matured a lot. He took the initiative to go to the border and inherit his father's will to protect the Grand Xia. In the end, Ruoshi chose to stay in the manor. 7 years were like a day, grinding ink, adding incense, serving tea and water. She never asked for anything and didn't want to change anything. In the past, Zhang Sun didn't mention the 3-year agreement he made with Zhang Sun. The position of the Marquis' mistress was always empty. Even if many officials brought up this matter, it was suppressed by Zhang Sun in the end. 7 years later, Zhang Sun's body couldn't hold on anymore and was about to reach the end of his life. Ning Chen stood silently in front of Zhang Sun's sickbed. He stood there for several days and nights without leaving half a step. Outside the imperial city, lanterns and decorations were hung. A new year was coming. The atmosphere of saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new spread throughout the city. The city was very lively. When the New Year's bell rang, Zhang Sun, who had been sleeping on the sickbed, woke up. His eyes were unprecedentedly bright. Ning Chen's eyes flashed with a touch of unconcealable sadness. Finally, this moment had arrived. "Help me up," Zhang Sun whispered. Ning Chen nodded and immediately stepped forward to help Zhang Sun. Carefully standing up, he got off the bed and walked towards the window. Behind him, Qing Ning and Xia Sinyu's eyes were filled with tears. They slightly turned their heads away, not letting the tears affect Zhang Sun's final mood. Inside and outside the palace, the lights were so beautiful that the night was as bright as day. With the sound of the bell echoing, a new year had come. "I remember when you first entered the palace, you weren't as tall as me. You were reckless like a child. I didn't expect more than 10 years to pass in the blink of an eye." Zhang Sun whispered as she looked at the lights outside the window. "I was stupid back then. I just offended the West Palace, and now I offended her ladyship. Now that I think about it, I was really lucky that I didn't get my head chopped off after causing so much trouble." Ning Chen smiled. Zhang Sun smiled. Time had truly passed too quickly. Who would have thought that the child she had picked up back then would grow up to this point? Outside the window, in the starry night sky, a crescent moon hung high in the sky. The moonlight was a bit cold, but it wasn't unbearable. The figure in front of the window quietly looked at the scenery outside. After a long time, his arm fell down silently. He leaned on Zhang Ming's shoulder and peacefully fell asleep. Zhang Sun had no regrets in his life. Qing Ning and Xia Xinyu could no longer hold back their tears. They dropped down and knelt down to bid farewell to their loved ones. Zhang Ming's tears soaked his red robes. The Marquis Zhang Ming, who had never wavered even in the face of the gods, trembled again and again. His heart gradually sank. You still know to come back. This one knows his wrongs. Speak, what wrongs did you do? I shouldn't have tied up Qing Ning, I shouldn't have taken the items from the palace, and I shouldn't have faked her ladyship's decree and sneaked out of the palace. I shouldn't have haggled with her ladyship and refused to return to the palace. Good, very good. If you didn't tell me, I really wouldn't have known that you had made so many mistakes. Tell me, how should I punish you? My ladyship, Ning Chen, also knows his wrongs. Now that the matter of the true extreme country's envoy is more important, why don't we give him a chance to redeem himself? Since even Qing Ning has pleaded for you, I'll spare you this time. However, I can spare you the death penalty, but you can't escape punishment. Since you want to leave the palace so badly, I'll ground you for half a year. You can't step out of Wei Yang Palace for half a year. You can't wait to leave. My ladyship, you must know that my personality isn't suitable for the palace. As long as I stay here, I'll get into trouble sooner or later. I'm the Empress of Xia. Can't I protect you? What are you afraid of? The past flashed past Zhang Ming's eyes like smoke. It was reflected in the tears that fell down. Men don't cry easily unless they are deeply hurt. Ning Chen said softly. Due to the arrival of the Lord of the Underworld, the eastern region was forced out of the 5 regions and became a special place. As a result, the people of the Divine Prefecture had never seen an ocean, let alone know what an ocean was. Hearing the explanation, Ruoshi still didn't understand, but she didn't ask any more questions. Ning Chen didn't explain anything and continued to walk forward with the woman beside him. Half a day later, the sound of waves entered their ears, and a magnificent scene appeared in front of the two. The endless blue sea, the sound of wind, the sound of waves, and the sound of wind beating against the stone walls, gradually raised waves more than 10 feet high. The beautiful and spectacular scene was fascinating. Is this the sea? Ruoshi was fascinated by the scenery in front of her. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a strange light as she asked in surprise. Yes, Ning Chen nodded and responded. Is there an end to the sea? Ruoshi looked back at the man beside her and asked. Yes, the place we are going to is at the end of the sea, Ning Chen replied. Since there was no way to wake up the ghost girl in the divine land, then he would go to the other 4 regions to find it. He didn't believe in fate, he only believed in human effort. Looking at the endless sea in front of her, Ruoshi's face showed a touch of embarrassment and asked, how are we going to get there? By boat, Ning Chen looked to the north and calmly said. Puzzled, Ruoshi looked around but didn't see any ships. She couldn't help but wonder, where is the ship? Before he finished speaking, a luxurious merchant ship appeared in front of the two of them amidst the surging waves in the north. On the ship's sail, the word Xian was embroidered in golden thread. It was so clear that under the setting sun, it emitted a dazzling golden light. On the merchant ship that just set sail, young Lord Xian stood at the head of the ship, looking at the scenery along the way with a carefree heart. The money earned from this trip to the Eastern Territory was equal to the Xian family's savings in the past few decades. At this moment, young Lord Liang Chen saw 2 figures waving at him from the distant shore. His eyes froze for a moment and looked left and right. They were the only ship on the sea, so they were calling for them. Stop the ship and dock. Young lord, what's wrong? We just set sail. Qi was puzzled. Could it be that young lord's head is starting to become abnormal again? Someone wants to take the ship. Hurry up and dock. What's with all this nonsense? Young Lord Xian said in a bad mood. Yes. Chi muttered in response and immediately went down to give the order. Sure enough, young lord's head was short-circuited again. This was the first time he heard that a merchant ship needed to pull passengers along the way. As the merchant ship approached, an old man came out of the ship and looked at the man and woman in front of him. He didn't know why, but he always felt something was wrong. How could there be such a bold young lord and maid who dared to casually board a passing merchant ship? Ning Chen and Ruo Shi boarded the ship. It must be said that in the eyes of ordinary people, Hua Kuei's charm was much greater than the red-robed young lord beside her. Young Lord Xian's eyes were shining, and the only thing missing was the word infatuated written on his face. Young Lord, young Lord. Chi kept tugging at someone's clothes and reminded him with a face full of shame. If it weren't for the fact that this was his young lord, he would have pretended not to know him. Oh. Young Lord Xian came back to his senses and quickly put away his pig face. Cupping his fist, he asked, "This one is Xian Liang Chen, how should I address you?" Ning Chen. Ning Chen calmly said. Good name. Young Lord Xian gave a thumbs up and continued to ask, Brother Ning is also going to the southern tomb? And, I've been in the eastern domain for a long time, so I'm ready to go out and see the scenery of the other domains. Ning Chen replied. Brother Ning is in such a good mood. Young Lord Xian's tone was full of envy. Ha! Ning Chen smiled. He could also see that this young Master Xian was not an ordinary person. It was not because of his identity or cultivation, but because his breadth of mind and bearing was not something an ordinary person could compare with. It made people have a whole new level of respect for him. Chi, go arrange a guest room for Brother Ning and this girl to rest first. Young Lord Xian turned around and ordered. Chi nodded and stepped forward. Young Lord Ning, please. Thank you. Ning Chen thanked him and immediately walked forward with Ruo Shi. After the two left, young Lord Xian's eyes flashed with light. He said to himself, this girl is even more beautiful than Miss Susu of the White Knight House. It's really unreasonable. Young lord, this red-clothed young man is not an ordinary person. Be careful. The old man came over and reminded him. Young lord, I'm not an ordinary person either. Besides, don't I have Uncle Ling? Young Lord Xian laughed. In the guest room, the furnishings were simple and plain. Compared with the luxurious appearance of the ship, it was much more pleasing to the eye. Young Lord Xian only arranged a guest room for them. What he was thinking in his head, even a fool could guess. Ning Chen didn't point it out, and Ruo Shi also didn't care. As usual, she did what she needed to do. After Chi left, the woman began to freshen up. She took off her hairpin in front of the bronze mirror. Her black hair cascaded down like a waterfall, so beautiful that it was intoxicating. Among all the women he had met in his life, Ruo Shi was absolutely not inferior to anyone in terms of appearance. In the past, she was the most beautiful woman in the entire Grand Xia dynasty. After all these years of accumulation, she had reached the most beautiful period of her life. She was even more elegant and dazzling than before. Young lord, do you think people cannot age? Ruo Shi looked at herself in the mirror and asked softly. On the side, Ning Chen, who was thinking about something, came back to his senses. After thinking for a moment, he said, the Xiantian realm can preserve one's appearance. In addition, there should also be some rare treasures that can slow down the aging process. Speaking up to here, Ning Chen glanced at the woman's face reflected in the bronze mirror and smiled. What's wrong? Are you afraid your young lord won't want you anymore if you're not beautiful anymore? Ruo Shi chuckled and responded, N. Rumor has it that dragon liver and phoenix gallbladder have the effect of preserving one's appearance. If you encounter a flood dragon, young Lord Xian will bring back a piece of dragon liver for you. Ning Qin smiled. Okay. Ruoshi's eyebrows curved as she nodded. You rest first, I'll go outside for a walk. On the way, I'll ask young Lord Xian some things about the southern tomb. Ning Qin got up and said. Outside the cabin, the sun had already set, and night had arrived. The sky was filled with twinkling stars, and the bright moon sprinkled down a lustrous white splendor that was reflected in the seawater, reflecting the clear and crystalline waves of light. The night on the sea was very beautiful. The sky was wide and the earth was wide, making one's heart feel unprecedentedly comfortable. Young Lord Xian sat at the bow of the ship, swaying back and forth to enjoy the scenery, but he wasn't afraid of falling off the ship. Ning Qin came over and didn't disturb him. Standing on the edge of the ship, he looked at the gradually disappearing divine land with a touch of imperceptible sadness in his calm eyes. Brother Ning, it's a beautiful day with beautiful women accompanying you, but you're here enjoying the sea breeze. What a killjoy. On the bow of the ship, young Lord Xian looked back at the red-robed young man on the edge of the ship and smiled. Ah! Ning Qin covered up the sadness in his eyes and smiled faintly. Young Lord Xian, aren't you also enjoying the sea breeze here? Ai, it's all tears. When I came out in a hurry, I forgot to bring along my beautiful maids. Now I can only sit here in a daze and sleep alone. Young Lord Xian's face was full of regret. Boom! At this moment, the bow of the ship suddenly shook violently as if it had hit something. Sitting at the bow of the ship, young Lord Xian staggered and almost fell into the sea. Fortunately, he had a few skills and barely managed to return to the hull. Uncle Ling, who was responsible for protecting the merchant ship, flashed out and looked around the ship. His eyes sank. Did they encounter a sea monster? Next to the bow of the ship, Ning Qin looked at the huge figure surging under the water. His eyes flashed with a blazing red light. The giant figure in the sea immediately trembled as if it felt the most terrible threat and quickly sank to the bottom of the sea. Huh, it's not shaking anymore. Did we hit a reef? Young Lord Xian murmured with a puzzled expression. Uncle Ling's eyes also raised doubts. What's going on? Just now he clearly saw something around the ship. Chapter 407. The time on the sea was long and abnormally long, but surprisingly smooth. 2 months ago, the ship encountered a strange tremor, but since then, they didn't encounter any trouble along the way. With the southern tomb mainland in sight, the mood of the people on the ship became more and more expectant. After being out for so long, everyone wanted to go home as soon as possible. Brother Ning, what are your plans after arriving at southern tomb? At the bow of the ship, young Lord Xian asked softly. Let's walk around first before making any arrangements. Ning Qin calmly replied. Since Brother Ning has no specific arrangements, why don't you come to the Xian family as a guest for a few days? I can also show Brother Ning the local customs of southern tomb. Young Lord Xian sincerely invited. Ning Qin thought for a moment and nodded. Then this one will thank young Lord Xian in advance. Oh, Brother Ning is too polite. Young Lord Xian replied with a free and easy smile. 5 days later, the merchant ship docked. The people who came to receive them were already waiting on the shore. After helping to unload the goods, batch after batch were transported to the various chambers of commerce of the Xian family. Young Lord, soap. Ruoshi pointed to the boxes of goods unloaded from the ship with a smile. In the Divine Continent, everyone knew that this soap was actually produced by the young lord. The raw materials and manufacturing process were very simple. Who would have thought that it would become a luxury item when shipped to southern tomb? All merchants are profiteers. This young Lord Xian is very knowledgeable. Besides, this is not a necessity for the common people. In the end, the people who sell it are the nobles who have too much money to spend. Ning Qin smiled and didn't care. Brother Ning, there are still 2 days before we reach Swallow Song City. Let's hurry. Young Lord Xian walked over and called out. Young Lord Xian, please go ahead. This one suddenly remembered that there is still a small matter to take care of. After it is done, I will go to Swallow Song City to visit. Ning Chen calmly said. Young Lord Xian was startled but quickly recovered. He didn't ask any more questions and cupped his fist to bid farewell. In that case, Liangshan will wait for Brother Ning's arrival in Swallow Song City. The caravan set off and Xian and Liangshan also set off with the caravan. Under the rolling wheels, the ship gradually moved away. Young Lord, where are we going now? Ruoshi's eyes showed a puzzled look. How come she didn't hear young Lord Xian mention anything else? Do you remember 2 months ago, the ship seemed to hit something and shook violently? Ning Chen asked. What's wrong? Didn't young Master Xian say he encountered a reef? Ruoshi was puzzled. That's not a reef. Furthermore, it's following us. Ning Chen turned around and looked at the sea behind him as he replied. The sky darkened, and the people on the shore were already far away. Ning Chen took Ruoshi, and with a wave of his hand, he turned into a stream of light and flew towards the sea. 300 miles later, a red light appeared. Ning Chen sent Ruoshi into the ghost palanquin he summoned. Then, he immediately walked to a spot not far away from the palanquin. With a flip of his hand, the King of Hell's heavenly sword appeared in his hand. With a wave of the sword, the rumbling waves split the surface of the sea. It was a shocking scene. The phoenix body was different from the main body, or it could be said that it was different from a human's physique. With the phoenix origin as the foundation and the phoenix blood as the body, after 9 years, it had basically recovered to the original 5 tribulation realm. However, it was still quite a distance away from entering the 3 calamities realm. During the Battle of Mount Chizhou, Ji Ming was forced to use the forbidden technique of the life scroll, causing his cultivation to dissipate and his vitality to overdraft. Fortunately, Niu Cheng saved his life with the ability to reverse the heavens. However, the crippled cultivation had to be recultivated in the end. Ning Chen didn't care too much about his own cultivation. After a brief exchange with Mu Bai 9 years ago in the barren city, he truly realized that there was no absolute relationship between a person's strength and their cultivation. Mu Bai may not have stepped into the Xiantian realm until the last moment, but that sword of his was really not something any Xiantian or even 3 calamities realm cultivator could reach. Of course, if one's strength reached the level of Hell King, everything would be a different story. Under Ning Chen's body, the sea parted and a terrifying beast roar came out. 3,000 feet below, a huge turtle-shaped sea beast the size of an island appeared. The beast's head was short and small like a snake, and its head and tail were hundreds of feet long. It was a monster that had never been seen before. However, at this moment, the one who was more frightened was the giant sea beast. The snake's head trembled as it looked at the red-robed young man in the air. Its eyes were full of begging for mercy. The phoenix was the top existence among the mythological beasts. There were very few who could compare to it. This kind of pressure from the depths of their bloodline made the black tortoise descendant, who only had a small amount of ancestral blood, feel extreme fear in his heart. Inside the ghost palanquin, Ruoshi looked at the monster below with a trace of surprise on her beautiful face. There was actually such a huge creature in the world. Why are you following us? Ning Chen coldly asked. "Oh." The black tortoise descendant suppressed the fear in his heart and growled. "I don't understand." Ning Chen directly replied. When the 2 phoenixes called out to him, he didn't understand half a word, let alone this monster that looked like a black tortoise but didn't seem to be qualified. "Oh." The black tortoise descendant roared again. "I don't understand you no matter how much you roar." Ning Chen unhappily said. "Oh." The black tortoise descendant refused to give up and continued to roar. Ayo my ass. Do you believe I won't kill you and make a stew? Ning Chen's ears hurt from the roar of the monster below. He was in a bad mood. Young master, it seems to have something to ask of you. In the ghost palanquin, Ruoshi couldn't stand it anymore and reminded. Ask? Your young master has everything. Speaking up to hear, Ning Chen's voice paused as a dangerous light flashed in his eyes. Looking at the monster below, he put on a fake smile and said, You aren't thinking about the phoenix blood, are you? In the sea, the black tortoise descendant roared and nodded his head, causing waves to rise 100 feet high. Ning Chen chuckled and the brilliance of his sword revolved. Strange things happened every year, but this year was especially strange. He had seen people who weren't afraid of death, but he had never seen someone who actively sought death. Since the idea was on him, he would have an excuse to kill it and make a stew. Young master, killing is not good. Ruoshi saw the situation wasn't right and hurriedly stopped him. Ao. The black tortoise descendant felt something at this time and roared in fear. Since Ruoshi had spoken, Ning Chen could only suppress the urge to cut the turtle shell a few times. He glanced at the monster below and lightly said, You want the phoenix blood, but I have a sword. If you want to die, I can help send you on your way. Ao. The black tortoise descendant opened his mouth and a drop of dark yellow blood flew out from his mouth. In an instant, a heavy aura pressed down, causing the sea to churn. When the essence blood flew out, the black tortoise descendant's aura immediately weakened a lot, and his spirit also withered. Ning Chen's eyelids twitched, and the idea of killing and making a stew once again came to his mind. This should be a black tortoise descendant without a doubt. Ruoshi had stayed with a certain someone for a long time. Naturally, she could see the change in her young master's heart. She quickly reminded him again, Young master, it's getting dark. We need to find a place to rest. Ning Chen withdrew his thoughts and understood that with Ruoshi here, it was impossible to make a stew. He unwillingly looked at the black tortoise descendant and said, You want a drop of your heart's blood for a drop of phoenix blood? Ao. The black tortoise descendant nodded and responded. You can think of anything, but I won't exchange. Ning Chen snorted and said, Your drop of heart's blood is of no use to me. You should keep it for yourself. Ruoshi, let's go back. After saying that, Ning Chen stepped in front of the ghost sedan chair and prepared to leave. Ao. The black tortoise descendant was anxious. Its huge body moved, and suddenly a huge wave rose to a height of 100 feet. Amidst the waves, Ning Chen was worried about Ruoshi and didn't move away. With a wave of his sword, the 100 feet wave dispersed. Ruoshi, the young master, is angry. Today, we must kill it and make a stew. His red clothes were dyed wet, but in a flash, it was restored to its original state. Ning Chen flipped his palm and pushed the ghost sedan chair into the sky. Then, with a move of his feet, he instantly entered the sea. A sword fell from the sky, followed by a dazzling stream of light, crashed into the black tortoise's shell. In an instant, 100 miles of sea area, huge waves rolled and quickly spread in all directions. The black tortoise fell 1,000 feet. One roar of fear after another echoed in the sea as it constantly begged for mercy. Ning Chen just acted as if he didn't hear it. Standing on top of the turtle shell, he slashed it twice with his sword. Needless to say, it was really strong. Without using all his strength, he probably couldn't break it. The black tortoise was frightened, but its extreme desire for phoenix blood forced it to try to communicate with the human on its back again. Ao. With a bestial roar, a blue turtle shell on the black tortoise's back cracked open. The heart-protecting armor flew up and quickly shrank, falling into the former's hand. Ning Chen looked at the turtle shell in his hand and narrowed his eyes. This was to make him feel embarrassed. The heart-protecting armor fell off, and a blue light flashed on the black tortoise's back. The turtle shell quickly recovered, but the color was different from before. It was unknown how long it would take for the heart-protecting armor to grow again. Knowing that these creatures' cultivation wasn't easy, Ning Chen no longer made things difficult for the big guy under him. He waved his hand and put away the turtle shell. Then, he turned his palm and urged his phoenix chi. In a burst of blood, a drop of blood flew out. It was a looming golden color, showing signs of ancestral reversion. The black tortoise's body shook, and then it nodded fiercely. Its eyes showed endless gratitude. For the sake of your cultivation, I'll help you this time. Be careful in the future. Don't meet human warriors casually. Not everyone is like this young master who is not interested in turtle soup. As soon as his voice fell, Ning Chen waved his hand and sent the phoenix blood to the black tortoise. Then, his figure flashed and flew to the sea. He put away the black tortoise's blood floating in the air with a look of disgust. This big guy has lived for so long, but it still hasn't cultivated to the point of ancestral reversion. How stupid. Ruashi, let's go. Ning Chen stepped to the side of the ghost palanquin and said. N. Ruashi smiled and said. Ao. The black tortoise roared and gratefully bid farewell to the two in the air. I don't understand. Don't roar anymore. Ning Chen waved his hand casually. After 2 steps, he took Ruashi beside him and turned into a red light. Under the moonlight, 2 voices came out from the red light. Young master, did you suffer a loss? I can't say. That turtle shell is a bit useful. Although this creature has a long life, its cultivation speed is too slow. If I can help, I'll help. Oh, Ruashi doesn't understand these things. But it's good that you didn't suffer a loss. Oh, of course. Chapter 408. Nanling, a divine land no smaller than the divine land. Dynasties, sects, ancient lands, great religions, and other legacies were like stars in the sky, taking root in this territory. For the past 30,000 years, it has been extremely prosperous. Swallow Song City, as the largest city on the northeast coast of Nanling, was endlessly visited by caravans, making this big city the most lively place within 1,000 miles. The Xian family started out as a merchant. 300 years of history wasn't too long, but it has already developed into a big family that spans more than 10 cities. Shops were everywhere, and it was unusually prosperous. Eldest young Master Xian was born in the Xian family, but he wasn't the son of the first wife nor the eldest son. Instead, he was the second son of a concubine. However, the real eldest young master, whether it was his talent in business or contribution to the family, was far behind Xian Yangchen. Not to mention, the Xian family's patriarch was a man of his word. In recent years, intentionally or unintentionally, he had revealed the intention of passing the patriarch's position to the second young master. When Ning Chen learned of this situation, he just sneered and didn't say anything. Schemes that don't appear on the surface are extremely boring. On the street, eldest young Master Xian was full of interest as he took the two to browse the local customs of Swallow Song City. Along the way, he was chattering away with excessive enthusiasm. Ning Chen was easy to talk to, but Ruashi's personality was a quiet one. She couldn't stand the buzzing chatter around her like a fly and couldn't wait to slap him to death. This is Lu Xian Lu. This young master opened it with his private money. Come in and have a seat. In front of an elegantly decorated tea house, eldest young Master Xian stopped and looked at the 2 people beside him. N. Ning Chen nodded and walked in with Ruashi. Lu Xian Lu wasn't small and had 2 floors. Eldest young Master Xian led the 2 directly to the 2nd floor and sat down in front of a table near the window. Ruashi stood behind her young master and didn't take a seat. Although her young master didn't care about the red tape, she did. Ding! The sound of a pipa echoed in the pavilion. The light sound directly reached people's hearts, simple but so beautiful. Ning Chen followed the voice and looked to the other side of the second floor. He saw a plainly dressed young lady sitting there, quietly playing the pipa for every customer. From the way the girl was dressed, it could be seen that she was the daughter of a poor family. Her appearance could not be said to be very beautiful, but she was unusually delicate and pretty. Her eyes were clean and firm, without the slightest trace of self-pity. Ning Chen turned around and looked at young Master Xian's unprecedentedly calm demeanor. He smiled faintly. Since ancient times, heroes have a weakness for the charms of beautiful women. Although this young Master Xian was not a hero, he was indeed a good person. Young Master Xian, didn't you just say that you opened Lucien restaurant with your own money? Ning Chen asked while drinking the tea in his hand. Not bad, right? Young Master Xian came back to his senses and replied. You have an ulterior motive. Ning Chen smiled and said. What do you mean? Young Master Xian was startled, not understanding the meaning of the former's words. Ruo Shi, on the other hand, understood the meaning behind his words. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a touch of surprise as she slightly changed her view of this seemingly sloppy playboy. Smash it! It was at this moment a huge commotion rang out from the first floor. A large group of people broke into the tea house and smashed everything in sight. The guests were so frightened that they immediately fled in panic. Xian Liangchen's face turned cold as he stood up and quickly walked downstairs. Second young Master Xian, I trust you have been well since we last met. A cold female voice came from behind. Surrounded by the crowd, a woman in a purple dress walked up to the second floor. Her slightly raised eyes were filled with indifference and ruthlessness, making people not dare to look directly at her. Zhao Ling, Seeing the person who came, Xian Liangchen's face immediately turned ugly. Why is she here? What are you still standing there for? Continue to smash. Zhao Ling, glanced at the group of people behind her and coldly said. As soon as her voice fell, a group of burly men came out, lifted the tables and chairs, and began to smash them. Loud bangs rang out one after another, shaking the entire Lucien restaurant. Miss Xiao, you and I have no grievances in the past, nor do we have any enmity today. Don't you think you have gone too far? Xian Liangchen calmed down and said. So what if I'm bullying you? Zhao Ling, ridiculed. Her gaze shifted and noticed a woman holding a pipa not far away. She sneered and said, Take her away. Two burly men stepped forward, grabbed the pipa, and were about to take the woman away. At this moment, Xian Liangchen, who had been restraining himself, finally couldn't bear it anymore. Stamping his foot, he leaped out and arrived at the other side of the tea house in 2 breaths. With a punch and a kick, the two burly men immediately flew out and fell to the ground. Are you okay? Xian Liangchen looked at the woman behind him, his face full of concern. I'm fine, thank you young Master Xian. Jia Qi recovered from the panic and softly thanked him. A hero saves a beauty, a talented man and a beautiful woman, a perfect pair. Ning Chen reviewed all the words he could think of in his mind. The days of fighting and killing were too long, and his literary talent of the past was almost all gone. Young Master. Seeing her young master's mind running off to who knows where, Ruo Shi gently pulled his clothes and called out. Ning Chen came back to his senses and drank the tea in his hand while watching the show. Fortunately, these people hadn't hit him yet, otherwise he wouldn't even have a cup of tea to drink. Young master, aren't you going to help? Ruo Shi whispered. Help? What help? It's just a fight. The hero saves the beauty. Your young master goes up and does not have any justification. Ning Chen decisively shook his head. He hated fighting now. After so many years of fighting, he was tired of it. Moreover, this young Master Xian's martial arts foundation wasn't bad. Among ordinary people, he was a powerful figure who could fight against dozens of people. Against these people, one hand was enough. Xian Liangchen, you dare to touch this princess's people. Are you tired of living? Zhao Ling's expression sank. Picking up a teacup, she directly threw it out of the window. With a loud bang, the teacup that had fallen out of the window shattered into pieces. Along with the clanging of footsteps, groups of armored soldiers quickly rushed over from not far away and surrounded the entire Lucien restaurant. Princess. A young general came upstairs with more than 10 blue armored soldiers and respectfully saluted. Seal the Lucien restaurant. In addition, put this woman in prison. Zhao Ling coldly ordered. Yes. The general accepted the order and led the soldiers behind him to arrest the woman. Zhao Ling, what crime did Miss Zheqi commit? In your eyes, is there any law? Xian Liangchen blocked the front with a gloomy expression. In Swallow Song City, this princess's words are the law. Take her away. Zhao Ling, coldly shouted. The general no longer hesitated and immediately moved to arrest the woman. Xian Liangchen's anger couldn't be suppressed. Encountering such a disaster for no reason, he couldn't stand it anymore. Stepping forward, he grabbed a soldier and directly threw him out. With a bang, the soldier who was thrown out hit 4 or 5 people. Suddenly, everyone was thrown into a mess. Ruoshi, do you think this Zhao family is the same Zhao family that always wants to rob my things? Ning Chen looked back at the woman beside him and asked. Ruoshi can't tell. Did young master see anything? Ruoshi shook her head and replied. In her opinion, it shouldn't be. There were so many surnames in the world, how could there be such a coincidence? No. Ning Chen simply replied, I also can't tell. I just heard that a woman's sixth sense is more accurate, so I was just casually asking. According to Luo Xingchen, the people of the central region's Zhao family were overbearing and unreasonable. Today, seeing this princess surnamed Zhao, it was very similar. At this time, Zhao Ling finally noticed the 2 people sitting by the window and watching the play. She frowned. Who were these 2 people? Although Zhao Ling was overbearing, she wasn't a fool. The red-robed young man and the maid beside him were too calm. It was really abnormal for a maid to have such courage. See, do it. Zhao Ling was worried about new problems and didn't want to delay any longer. She said to a skinny old man behind her. Yes. The old man stepped forward and his body shot forward. His right hand turned into a claw and grabbed at Xian Liangchen. Bang! Xian Liangchen's fist met the attack head-on. A powerful shockwave spread out around the 2 people. The broken table and chairs were immediately sent flying 4 or 5 meters away. San, you also go. Zhao Ling said. Yes. A middle-aged man walked out. His figure flashed, and a cold sword drew a dazzling light as it pierced toward Xian Liangchen's chest. This merciless sword showed its master's heartlessness. It also showed Zhao Ling's ruthlessness. This was a premeditated scheme that made it impossible for people to retreat. Princess, you've already established your power. There's no need to kill him. Where it's possible to let people off, you should spare them. As he spoke, his red robes flashed. Zhao Ling only saw a blur in front of her. When she came back to her senses, the red-robed young man was already in the middle of the battle. He held a tortoise shell in his hand and blocked Xian Liangchen's sword. Her black hair cascaded down her back. Zhao Ling's expression changed as she looked at the red-robed young man's other hand. In that instant, she had removed the hairpin from his head. An expert. The same thought flashed through everyone's minds. San's expression also changed. His sword changed direction and pressed toward the young man in front of him. However, the tortoise shell blocked the sword, making it so that the sword in the swordsman's hand was unable to pass even half a step. Back down. Ning Chen waved his hand and forced San back. Then he helped young Master Xian to the side. He condensed Yuan with his sword finger to help him suppress the true qi in his body. Brother Ning, you actually have such a powerful expert. You really hid it from me for a long time. Xian Liangchen bitterly smiled. I thought you could beat them. I didn't expect you to be beaten so miserably. Ning Chen smiled. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. Moreover, they have swords in their hands. Xian Liangchen helplessly said. This girl is not bad. She's much stronger than those in your manor. Ning Chen glanced at the worried girl beside young Master Xian. Brother Ning, don't talk nonsense. I still haven't married. How could there be anyone in my manor? Xian Liangchen hurriedly explained. Ah, what are you in such a hurry for? What I said was that she's much better than those maids in your manor. Ning Chen smiled. Xian Liangchen's expression froze. He glanced at the girl beside him. His eyes flashed with uneasiness. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Seeing this, Ning Chen didn't say anything more. As for whether or not young Master Xian could seize the opportunity, that was up to him. Princess, you dropped your hairpin. After finishing his business, Ning Chen turned his head and looked at the purple-robed girl. He extended his hand and handed over the hairpin. Chapter 409. The second floor of Lucien building was filled with broken tables, chairs, and broken porcelain. Zhao Ling, her side had many people and many blades, but at this moment, they were abnormally nervous. The red-clothed youth in front of them was a bit too strong. It was no longer something that could be solved with many people and blades. A hairpin was in the hands of the red-clothed youth, but no one dared to take it. Expert, concubine Chao Tianji asks for guidance. At this moment, a ray of light flashed and entered the battle. A 3-foot-long sword swallowed the red-clothed youth like a poisonous snake. With a clang, the silver hairpin blocked the sword. Before they could even turn their eyes, another extraordinary figure appeared, joining hands to fight knowing destiny. Father! Seeing the man appear beside her, Zhao Ling, was startled and bowed. Watch the battle first. The city lord of Swallow Song said calmly. Concubine Chao Tianji and Bai Shaoran, the 2 strongest generals under the city lord of Swallow Song, were joining hands to fight knowing destiny. Xian Liangchen grabbed Jia Qi's arm and retreated to the side. He looked at the city lord of Swallow Song, who had appeared in Lucien building. His expression became heavy. Even a relative of the imperial family had come. It seemed that today's matter was more complicated than he had imagined. In one battle, 2 swords were so extraordinary. Every move and style was the pinnacle of strength. On the other hand, the red-clothed youth in the sword stepped on flowing light and swam among the sword shadows. The sword didn't touch his body, which shocked everyone present. The city lord's expression froze. What a powerful youth. Concubine Chao Tianji and Bai Shaoran couldn't even test his strength. This is a meaningless battle. Stop! Ning Chen stopped in his tracks. The silver hairpin in his hand stopped the wind and clouds. With a clanging sound, 2 swords and 2 shadows were sent flying out of the room. The battle stopped. Concubine Chao Tianji and Bai Shaoran retreated several steps. After stabilizing themselves, they didn't attack again. They knew that the youth in front of them had already held back. If they continued to force him, it would be unwise. I am the city lord of Swallow Song. May I ask for your name? The city lord walked out and asked seriously. I wouldn't dare to ask for your name. I am Ning Chen. Greetings, city lord, Ning Chen said politely. Ah, heroes come from the young. Since we're fortunate enough to meet, why don't you come to my residence? The city lord invited. City lord is too kind. It's just that it's getting late. I'll definitely pay you a visit another day, Ning Qin said with a smile. In that case, this Xiao will wait for little brother Ning in the mansion. City Lord Yen Gu responded. Then, he glanced at the group of people behind him and said indifferently, let's go. After saying that, everyone left. Before they left, they looked at the red-clothed young man with dread in their eyes. Since when did such a terrifying figure appear in Swallow Song City? No one could figure him out. He was probably on par with the young geniuses from the eastern border. Princess, I'll return the hairpin to you. Ning Qin waved his hand, and the hairpin flew out towards Xiao Ling, who was about to leave. Xiao Ling, stopped and smiled. Then, with a wave of her delicate hand, she sent the hairpin back. I'll leave it to young master as a souvenir. The beautiful figure gradually disappeared into the distance, leaving behind her final words. The hairpin in his hand was exceptionally cold. Brother Ning, this vicious and merciless princess seems to have taken a fancy to you. Eldest young master Xian came over and said with a smile. Oh, I don't know if she likes me or not, but I do know that you're in big trouble right now. Ning Qin handed the hairpin to Ruo Shi, then looked at eldest young master Xian and said with a slight smile. Xian Liangqin smiled bitterly. This unprovoked disaster came too suddenly. He rarely had any dealings with the Zhao family and had never offended this princess. Today's matter was too outrageous. Ning Qin guessed a few things, but he didn't say anything. Today's martial arts show, whether it was true or not, the result would soon be clear. Eldest young master Xian arranged the follow-up arrangements for Lu Xianlu. Then, he sent someone to send Miss Jiqi back. His calm mind was very different from the usual spoiled brat. By the time everything was settled, the sun was already setting in the west. Eldest young master Xian looked apologetically at Ning Qin, who was sitting on the first floor and drinking tea. Brother Ning, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. It wasn't a long wait. The tea was good, so it was worth it. Ning Qin got up and put down the tea in his hand. Next, he would have to face the real master of the Xian family. Visiting someone else's house, it would be unreasonable to not pay a visit. With eldest young master Xian leading the way, the three set off for the Xian mansion. Today's big commotion must have been received by the Xian family. Once they return, there will be a lot of excitement. Along the way, no one knew what eldest young master Xian was thinking. His eyebrows were heavy with worry. Perhaps he was worried about the consequences of today's matter. Since ancient times, merchants have never fought with officials. It's just that Zhao Ling, was too much of a bully. At the entrance of the Xian mansion, as soon as the three stepped through the gate, a servant quickly came over and respectfully bowed. Second young master, the lord is holding a banquet in the back hall. You're the only one waiting for you. I know, I'll go there now. Eldest young master Xian's face showed a smile again. When the servant received the news, he bowed again and immediately turned to leave. Knowing that he could no longer object, he respectfully replied, "Thank you, father." The atmosphere at the banquet was much better than expected. At least on the surface, the father was kind, the son was filial, and the brothers were respectful. Each branch also got along well with each other. There was no hidden sarcasm. Every time the lord of the Xian family asked, Ning Qin would politely reply with a few words. As for whether it was true or not, no one knew. At the end of the banquet, the lord of the Xian family seemed to finally remember what happened at Lucien restaurant today. After a brief inquiry, he did not say much. After a few words of comfort, he did not continue. In the usual and harmonious family banquet, everyone played their role. Before the big interests were affected, no one would fall out face to face. When the moon was high in the east, the banquet ended and each branch returned. Ning Qin was arranged to stay in a guest room not far from the Xian family's residence. As usual, Ruoshi accompanied him to take care of his daily life. Young master, this lord of the Exian family seems to be good to young master Exian. Ruoshi said casually while tidying up the room. Perhaps. Ning Chen recovered from his thoughts and responded. Ruoshi heard the hidden meaning in her young master's words. Puzzled, she asked, did Ruoshi see wrongly? Ruoshi didn't see wrongly. It's just that there are too many sides to a person. Ruoshi has a kind heart, so she sees the good side. Ning Chen replied. Young master is also a good person. It's just that young master is smarter than Ruoshi. That's why you see more than Ruoshi. Ruoshi whispered. Ha! Ning Chen smiled. In the end, she was still his maid. No matter what, she would always think her young master was the best. The candlelight flickered, reflecting a charming face. After tidying up the room, Ruoshi returned to her room to rest. Her young master liked peace and quiet. At this time, she couldn't disturb him anymore. The night was deep and the moon was cold. In the room, the candlelight illuminated the red dress. It was slightly dazzling. In the quiet of the night, it always made one's mind too clear. But at the same time, it also made one more able to experience pain. Ning Chen got up, pushed open the door, and came outside. Looking at the moon in the sky, his eyes flashed with a trace of emotion. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. The human heart was so terrible. Perhaps, he never understood this cold and heartless human heart. In the city lord's mansion, the city lord of Swallow Song looked at the secret letter on the table. His eyes flashed. He didn't expect the second young master of the Exian family to have made friends with such an extraordinary young powerhouse. It seems that he can't touch the second young master again before finding out his true ability and purpose. Father. Zhao Ling walked over and respectfully said. Has the letter been sent? The city lord asked. Yes, their people should be here soon. Zhao Ling replied. Ling, you must be prepared for both eventualities. If the person they send fails, then this young man can't be provoked anymore. Try your best to win him over. The city lord slowly said. Father, don't worry. The person who's sent this time is a top powerhouse from the sect of life extermination, Hong Wulei. It's impossible for him to fail. Zhao Ling calmly said. I hope so. The city lord narrowed his eyes. Chapter 410. In the Exian residence, the city lord of Swallow Song City sent an invitation to the second young master and Ning Chen to the city lord's mansion. He didn't mention the previous incident at 6 Envy restaurant. When the lord of the Exian residence saw the invitation, he didn't say anything and directly sent it to the West Pavilion. In the West Pavilion, Exian Liangchen saw the invitation and immediately got up and walked towards the guest room. This Swallow Song City lord is really an impatient person. In the guest room, Ning Chen casually glanced at the invitation card handed over by young master Exian and slowly said. Brother Ning's strength is outstanding, Liangchen has benefited a lot from it. Exian Liangchen smiled. For you, it's hard to say whether it's a blessing or a curse. Ning Chen told the truth. That day, if it wasn't for that princess surnamed Xiao being so ruthless, he really didn't plan to make a move. After the incident at 6 Envy restaurant, if anyone wanted to make a move against Exian Liangchen in the future, they would have to use a completely different level of power than before. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it's unavoidable. Since someone is inviting, it's not a waste to not go. Exian Liangchen said freely. That makes sense. Ning Chen got up. Ruoshi walked in from outside the room. She had been busy since dawn, so when she saw her young master was about to go out, she put down the things in her hands and stood there waiting. Seeing this, Ning Chen chuckled and said, Ruoshi also wants to go. Let's go. After getting permission, Ruoshi immediately smiled sweetly. Her smile was so bright that it was intoxicating. Xian Liangchen was dazzled by her smile and quickly calmed his mind. This girl is too beautiful, it's better not to think of her as indecent. Not long after, the three left the Xian residence together and walked towards the city lord's mansion to accept the city lord's invitation. The fragrance of flowers drifted in the air as thousands of golden lotuses bloomed in the pond. It was an elegant and extraordinary place for a banquet. Today, the city lord of Swallow Song had invited all the heroes of the world. Talents, beauties, princes, and geniuses gathered to enjoy the rare scene of golden lotuses blooming. Originally, with the status of the Xian family, it was impossible for them to be invited, let alone the second son of a concubine of the Xian family. However, everyone knew that the city lord of Yangu had an ulterior motive. What happened in Lu Xian restaurant a few days ago had already spread to all the big families. Many people came to see who this strange young expert was. They're here. The eyes of a young man in silver robes moved as he spoke. Before he finished speaking, three figures slowly walked over from afar. They were dressed in red, and there was no aura of a cultivator. Every step they took was steady, but there was an indescribable feeling rising in the hearts of the crowd. The rumors are true. This person isn't simple, said one of the disciples. Greetings, City Lord. Ning Chen and eldest young master Xian bowed respectfully. You're too polite. Men, bring the two young masters to their seats, said Swallow Song City Lord calmly. The maidservant stepped forward and led the two to their seats. They were seated to the right of the silver-clothed youth who had spoken earlier. The scale of the banquet wasn't small. From the looks of it, there were at least 100 people present. Many of the children of aristocratic families had never seen the Xian family's first young master before. Beside each seat, there was a maid kneeling to serve them. However, with Ruoshi's arrival, Ning Chen naturally no longer needed her by his side. The former top courtesan of the Grand Xia imperial city had shed all her glamour and put on light makeup. However, her peerless beauty still made it hard for people to keep their eyes on her. It was difficult for them to control themselves. As for the gazes coming from all directions, Ruoshi didn't care. Her entire heart was focused on her young master. Pouring tea and wine, she never looked at anyone else. To the side, eldest young master Xian was extremely envious. But when he thought of his beautiful lady, he couldn't help but laugh like an idiot. On the main seat, Swallow Song City Lord looked at the red-clothed youth. A light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Everyone had a weakness. If this person's weakness was women, then it would be much easier to deal with him. Today, I've invited everyone here to admire the scene of the golden lotus blooming. The second reason is to make friends through martial arts. I presume everyone already knows that the 100 Empire competition is about to begin. My dynasty's imperial emperor has issued a decree a few days ago, ordering each city to quickly select their 3 strongest representatives. 4 months from now, they will be chosen in front of the Hall of Literature, said Swallow Song City Lord. As soon as his words fell, Swallow Song City Lord looked at everyone present. He was very clear that this was an opportunity that every family valued very much. Even if they couldn't get the qualification to enter the 100 Empire competition, as long as they could get a good ranking in the competition, they would still be rewarded by the Imperial Emperor. Today's Shu Dynasty's City Lord was an existence infinitely close to perfect perfection. Sitting on top of the central dragon vein, he sat on top of the dynasty's fortune. His strength didn't lose to any perfect perfection cultivator. If he could get the Imperial Emperor's recognition, then it would be a great opportunity for him to ascend to the heavens. Of course, not everyone was interested in this. For example, eldest young master Xian and Ning Chen next to him. Eldest young master Xian knew he had no chance at all. Ning Chen, on the other hand, was really tired of it. In the past, he had no choice but to fight. He fought for half his life from Hotian to God. Now, he really didn't want to fight anymore. Try it, it tastes really different from the lotus seeds at home. At the banquet, Ning Chen peeled the golden lotus seeds one by one and placed them in front of Ruoxi. Ruoxi picked up one and tasted it. She immediately nodded, it's not quite the same. The taste was cool, sweet, and slightly bitter. However, it wasn't the kind of unbearable bitterness. The sweetness in the bitterness was very unique. If you like it, I'll also bring over eldest young Master Xian's plate. Ning Chen smiled. Although the two's voices were very low, but the eldest young Master Xian on the side also had some martial arts foundation. He heard it clearly. At this moment, his heart was filled with infinite contempt. He finally understood why the phrase, valuing love over friendship, came to be. The person next to him was the best portrayal. The eldest young Master Xian carefully moved his lotus seed plate to the other side. He had a feeling that someone was really capable of doing such a thing. It was better to be on guard. Hearing her young master's words, Ruoxi smiled and said, just try one. How can a girl eat and let her young master serve her? This thing is good for maintaining one's appearance. Ning Chen didn't say much. The corner of his mouth slightly curved, and he directly used his big move. Ruoxi was taken aback. After a slight struggle, she immediately whispered, give it to me. Women, ah. Ning Chen chuckled in his heart. With a flip of his hand, a gentle force swept out. The lotus seeds on the eldest young Master Xian's plate fell from the table and flew into the plate in front of Ruoxi. The eldest young Master Xian was dumbfounded. Can it be like this? Young Master, is this thing really good for maintaining one's appearance? Ruoxi looked at the golden lotus seeds on the plate and confirmed again. Of course, when has your young master ever lied to you? Ning Chen responded. Ruoxi nodded with half belief and half doubt. Young master's words should be trustworthy. On the banquet table, the city lord of Swallow Town and the young masters of the aristocratic families exchanged pleasantries. The atmosphere was very lively. Sitting down, Ning Chen acted as if he didn't hear anything. In any case, he was only here to support the eldest young Master Xian. It wasn't easy to trick his own maid into eating something. As for whether this golden lotus was good for maintaining one's appearance, only the devil would know. Young Master Ning, I heard your skills are good. Why don't you come down and try out your fists and feet? On the opposite side of the banquet table, a slightly immature young man stood up and said. The newborn calf wasn't afraid of the tiger, so he always wanted to let everyone see how different he was. Kind laughter came from the banquet table. This young master wasn't even at the 8th grade natal stage. Challenging such a powerhouse, the gap was indeed too big. The young man's tone was polite, so Ning Chen didn't want to embarrass him. Smiling, he said, Young master, we are both at the peak of the 7th grade natal stage. I'm certainly not your opponent. Fists and feet have no eyes. It's best not to ruin the banquet's atmosphere. When the young man stood up, he was a little anxious. Now that he heard the praise of a recognized powerhouse, he was so happy that the corners of his eyes almost narrowed into a line. No longer insisting on exchanging pointers, he sat back in his seat in satisfaction. Nan Mingjin, I can't tell that he's just being perfunctory. He doesn't care about your little skills at all. At this moment, an ear-piercing voice came from the banquet table. Looking towards the source of the voice, a cold-looking young man was drinking from a cup of wine and mocking him. The young man named Nan Mingjin was provoked by the former's words. He immediately stood up and said angrily, Chu Huaijing, don't try to sow discord here. If you have the ability, come out and fight. We'll see who's the real deal. You're too weak. I'm not interested. Let your brother come. Chu Huaijing was unmoved. Nan Mingjin's face turned red. He was so angry that he couldn't say anything. As you wish. At this moment, a calm voice came from the distance. Everyone focused. Outside when Mo Jingluan, a man in golden clothes walked over. He was handsome, but not arrogant. Step by step, he walked into the banquet table. Nan Mingtian was a peerless genius from Yange City's Nanming family. He and Beigong Yu from the Beigong family were called the twin prodigies of Yange. They were true geniuses. Even in the 100 cities of the Tian Shu dynasty, they were rarely seen. How dazzling! Murmured Prince Xian to Nan Mingtian, who was wearing golden clothes. Brother! Nan Mingzhen's face lit up with joy. His strongest opponent had appeared. Chu Huaijing's expression turned cold. He stood up and said, Nan Mingtian, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Water hook sword, please advise me. There was a flash of azure light. Chu Huaijing stood between the two tables and waved his sword. His battle-intense sword. Golden Dawn, I'll let you understand the etiquette of the sword. Nan Mingtian took a step forward and unsheathed his sword. In an instant, an endless amount of golden light shone out. It was like a rising sun, dazzling people's minds. The young geniuses were going to fight. Everybody was astonished. They also wanted to see how strong one of the twin prodigies of Yange could be. On his seat, the mayor of Yange City didn't stop the battle. There were 3 candidates from Yange City. Of the 2 people in front of him, at least one of them would win. The winner of this battle would determine how high Yange City could reach in the competition. The swords hummed softly as the 2 swords clashed. With a clang, boundless turbulence was created. Chao Tianji and Bai Shaoran moved to the front of the 2 seats. They activated their true essence to block the scattered shockwaves. In the battle, the golden light was blazing and the water hook sword was condensed. They kept crossing each other. The 2 swords had been opposing each other since they were made. Today, they would finally decide who was stronger and who was weaker. Chapter 411. When Mo and Jingluan, the 2 swords clashed, their sharpness blossoming. These 2 geniuses of the younger generation used the sword to prove their martial prowess. This battle of the peak attracted the attention of everyone present. Nan Mingtian's golden sword was dazzling, like the rising sun, its light illuminating the world. It was a proud sword cultivator, shocking everyone. The hooked water sword was gentle and soft, dispersing the power of the rising sun. An ice-cold chill circulated, opposing each other. The battle between the 2 geniuses was difficult to determine. Every move was top-notch, intoxicating everyone watching. Brother Ning, who will win? Xianchen turned his head and asked, only to find that someone was still focused on peeling the lotus seeds for his maid. He couldn't help but have a headache. Shouldn't masters appreciate each other? How come this brother Ning doesn't seem to be paying attention? I don't know, don't ask me about the fight. Ning Qin didn't raise his head as he put the peeled lotus seeds on the plate in front of Ruoxi. He didn't seem to care about the battle at all. Young Master Ning, is this battle not enough to enter your eyes? At this moment, a silver-robed young man on the left side of the table softly asked. Young Master Beigong's words are too serious. I'm just not interested in fighting, nothing else. Ning Qin put the last lotus seed on the plate and calmly said. Hearing the 2 words Beigong, young Master Xian looked away in surprise. Could this young man be the other one of the twin prides of Yan and Gu who stood side by side with Nan Mingtian? He had never seen him before, so how did Brother Ning know? Young Master Ning's eyesight is extraordinary, Beigong Yu admires it. But there's something I don't understand. The 100 Dynasties competition is a rare opportunity for every cultivator to prove their martial prowess. If young master has such ability, why don't you want to show it? Beigong Yu sternly asked. I'm tired of it. Everyone has their own ambitions, so I can't force them, right? Ning Chen smiled and replied. Unfortunately, Bei Gongyu had always wanted to compete with young Master Ning. It seems I won't have this chance. Bei Gongyu sighed with regret. Ha! Ning Chen chuckled and glanced at the two people in the battle. Young Master Bei Gong, you won't be lonely. Before he finished speaking, the stalemate finally changed. Nan Mingtian's body shone with golden light as the sun rose from his sword. The sun illuminated the 9 heavens and shocked everyone present. With a peng sound, the two swords clashed, and a waterfall of blood sprayed out. Chu Huaijing had been defeated. Thanks for letting me win. Returning Jin Shi to its scabbard, Nan Mingtian turned around and walked to the side of the table. The battle isn't over yet. Where are you going? Right at this moment, the hooked water rose again, streaking across the air like a cold blade, pressing towards his life. Chu Huaijing, you've crossed the line. A silver light flashed as the long and narrow silver blade blocked the hooked water sword radiance. Bei Gongyu appeared on the battlefield and said indifferently. Behind Nan Mingtian, Jin Shi paused and turned around to look at the silver-robed young man. Bei Gong, when shall we fight? Let's talk about it later. Right now, I want to fight with that young Master Ning. You have to line up. Bei Gongyu's silver blade moved, forcing Chu Huaijing back. Nan Mingtian looked over at the red-robed young man and nodded. He really is an expert. However, it won't be easy for you to get what you want. The red-robed young man no longer had any battle intent. It was clear that he hadn't truly fought in a long time. People who liked to fight but didn't like to fight were the hardest to challenge. Let's leave it to fate. Didn't you go to the Sea God Palace at the bottom of the South Sea? Why did you come back so quickly? I ran into a peak sword expert. I couldn't get past him, so I came back. Nan Mingtian didn't hide anything. Oh. Even you couldn't get past him? It seems the Sea God Palace is even more mysterious than we thought, said Bei Gongyu gravely. The two most dazzling heavenly geniuses of Swallow Song City chatted as they returned to their seats. Chu Huaijing's expression changed again and again. He snorted coldly and suppressed his urge to attack again. He returned to his seat. Brother. Seeing his brother return, Nan Mingtian was in an extremely good mood. Little brother, don't always be so impetuous. Before, young Master Ning didn't care about your impudence because you were young. But with your little bit of cultivation, you still dare to challenge him without knowing your limits, lectured Nan Mingtian. I know I was wrong, Nan Mingtian said in a low voice with a bitter expression after being reprimanded. This interlude didn't affect the atmosphere of the banquet. 1,000 lotuses bloomed, and the beautiful scenery was intoxicating. Talented women played zither and beautiful women danced, making the banquet even livelier. Just at this moment, an arrow shot through the air. It was silent and sharp, and it was aimed directly at young Master Xian. Everyone's expressions changed. They were all startled by this arrow. However, whether or not they wanted to help, it was already too late. In that moment of crisis, the red-robed young man flashed over and blocked the arrow with his finger. The black arrow shattered. What shocking reaction speed! Nan Mingtian and Bei Gongyu narrowed their eyes. They took him even more seriously. On the main seat, Swallow Song City's city lord's eyes flashed. Had it begun? After one arrow failed, the attacker quickly retreated without any hesitation. From beginning to end, he didn't leave a trace. Men, chase after him, said the city lord. Yes. One soldier after another came out and quickly chased after Mo Jingluan. That was close. During the banquet, eldest young Master Xian wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Just now, he thought he was dead for sure. In front of him, Ning Chen looked in the direction the aura had disappeared. His eyes flashed coldly. He was very clear that this arrow had most likely been aimed at him. Young Master Xian had only been dragged down by him. City Lord, I suddenly remembered that I still have something important to do, so I won't disturb you any longer. I'll take my leave first. Ning Chen turned around and cupped his fists towards the city lord of Yangu, who was seated on the main seat, before he excused himself. Young Master Xian was startled. When he recovered, he also stood up. If Brother Ning left, there was no point in him staying. Swallow Song City's city lord nodded. Since little brother Ning has something to do, then I won't stay any longer. See you later. See you later. Ning Chen replied. Then, he led the two people by his side and left. Do you want to see what's going on? Bei Gongyu looked at Nan Mingtian and transmitted his voice to him. Not interested, said Nan Mingtian indifferently. Ha, with your personality, you won't have any friends, Bei Gongyu chuckled. Nan Mingtian didn't reply. He drank the wine in his cup and pondered. Outside Wenamo, Ning Chen took the two back the way they came. After a while, a cold wind suddenly blew on a deserted street. It was bone-chilling. She's finally here. Ning Chen stopped and said softly as he looked ahead. At the end of the street, white mist filled the air. A reddish-brown figure slowly walked over. On the blade, a bell rang. It was like the sound of the Yellow Springs. The newcomer was the top assassin of the Yu Luo life extermination sect, Hong Wulei. Her beautiful face was emotionless like a machine. She was the most ruthless assassin. Today, she blocked the path to knowing Destiny State. Without saying anything, the reddish-brown figure disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in front of the three people. Her cold blade flashed and chased after their souls. With a clang, Ning Chen blocked the blade with his sword. Looking at the woman in front of him, Ning Chen frowned and said, Who sent you? The Xian family or the city lord of Yangu? Hearing this, young Master Xian's heart sank. What's going on? Hong Wulei didn't answer. She turned her blade and slashed. The blade was fast and extremely tricky. She had never seen such a strange martial art before. It was difficult to catch her movements. Ning Chen still didn't use his sword. He condensed Yuan into a sword with his 2 fingers. He fought speed with speed and strangeness with strangeness. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen moves were exchanged. The blade and the sword collided. Hong Wulei, who was as still as a mountain, didn't move at all. Hong Wulei also saw that the person in front of her was extraordinary. She took a step and jumped into the air. She drew the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to her body and turned it into thousands of blade lights. Clang! With a soft sound, 2 fingers met the blade. It was an unbelievable scene. The deadly blade was completely restrained. It couldn't move half a step. What an amazing power control. It seems that our evaluation of him is low again. Outside the battle, 2 figures appeared. In the end, it was Bei Gongyu who persuaded Nan Mingtian to join them. Extraordinary warrior. Nan Mingtian nodded. This person's strength was beyond their expectations. In the battle, Hong Wulei saw the 2 fingers holding the blade. Her left hand moved, and a short blade appeared. She slashed at Ning Chen's throat. Ning Chen's expression didn't change. He flicked the blade and leaned to the side to avoid the short blade. Aren't you worried? Young Master Xian looked at the unusually calm woman beside him and was puzzled. This master and servant, one was more strange than the other. How big of a heart did they have to be indifferent to the situation in front of them? It's just a small matter. Ruoshi replied softly. Compared to the monsters that appeared in the divine great land in the past, this small matter was not even a trouble. Back off. The sword came again. Ning Chen didn't want to fight anymore. Sword intent spread out from his fingers, and the woman in front of him retreated. Hong Wulei's eyes narrowed. She no longer needlessly attacked. She moved her feet and quickly retreated. You let her go so easily. Young Master Xian was surprised. Young Master is a good person. He doesn't kill. Ruoshi said. It's getting late. Let's go back. Ning Chen glanced at Duan Feng on the ground and memorized the words Yu Luo extermination. N. Ruoshi followed and walked forward together. Young Master Xian also smacked his lips. He didn't take trouble seriously at all. His dog shit luck was really good. He randomly picked up a person who turned out to be such a powerful expert. After the three left, Nan Mingtian and Bei Gongyu walked out. When they saw the 4 words engraved on the broken blade, their eyes flashed. It was actually them. Nan Mingtian, if it were you facing that woman, could you do it without moving a step? Bei Gongyu asked solemnly. I can't. Nan Mingtian honestly said. The woman just now wasn't weak. Her moves were tricky and ruthless. He could retreat, but he couldn't do it without moving a step. Oh, I can't do it either. It seems this young Master Ning's control of power has reached an unimaginable level. I want to fight with him more and more. Bei Gongyu couldn't hide the hope in his eyes. It would be a pity if such a powerhouse was missing on the road ahead. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.